Chapter 163. After Cha-Cha successfully sent the children to the chief's side, it rushed towards Xiao Xian's side. However, this time it was attacked from the ground. There were always people hiding in the forest throwing sharp spears and stone knives at it. Occasionally, arrows with stone arrowheads would shoot out from behind a tree or from a pile of thick grass. This made it very annoyed, as it was still unable to ignore these attacks. If it was hit, it would still be injured. While dodging, Cha-Cha headed towards Xiao Xian's side. Xiao Xian's side also noticed Cha-Cha's predicament. If those people who were hiding only attacked and did not directly attack, it would not be easy to catch them. Xiao Xian still had to take care of the children here, so it was impossible for him to deal with those who attacked Cha-Cha. How about we don't let Cha-Cha come down? It's not far from the chief's side. Chen Jia said. Yes, don't let it come down. Another person also said. In the past, they did not like birds, because some water birds were a threat to the little treasure fish. Once they found a bird that was slightly bigger, the tribe's warriors would throw spears or arrows into the air to shoot the birds down. However, if the birds flew higher, it would be difficult for them to shoot accurately. Every time, they would choose to attack the birds when they were close to the ground. That way, the birds would be restricted by the surrounding terrain and would be easy to hit. Xueqi was currently looking for the people who attacked Cha-Cha, but in terms of speed, it was really difficult for Xueqi to catch them. Xiao Xian also knew that it was not good for Cha-Cha to come down now, but looking at the situation, if they went over on land, at least 2 of the 5 children would be injured, or even die. After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian said, I have an idea of. Really? What idea? Chen Jia asked. If Cha-Cha could bring them over, it would save them a lot of trouble. They would only be a burden if they stayed here. There's no need for Cha-Cha to come down. I will let you safely get on Cha-Cha's back. Don't worry, Xiao Xian said. Chen Jia hugged the rattan basket tightly and nodded his head vigorously. Yes. Seeing that Xiao Xian was not only protecting them, but also trying his best to solve the problem, Chen Jia was extremely touched. He had misunderstood Xiao Xian before, but at this time, Xiao Xian was actually so proactive in helping them. Sure enough, Xiao Xian was just like what his father said. Xiao Xian was really a good person. The Yanjiao tribe Xiao Xian belonged to must also be good people. Not only Chen Jia, but the other 4 children also had the same thoughts. They felt that Xiao Xian was a good person, and they also believed in Xiao Xian. Tie your rattan baskets tightly to your bodies, Xiao Xian said. I'm done. When you're on Cha-Cha's back, you must hold on tight. Don't let yourself fall off, Xiao Xian said again. Got it. We'll definitely do it. That's good. Xiao Xian chopped the spear thrown at him to one side, while his other hand reached out to Chen Jia, who was closest to him. Then, Chen Jia felt himself being picked up by a strong hand, along with the basket, like a little chick. Are you ready? Xiao Xian asked. Yes, yes. Chen Jia swallowed his saliva. He had a bad premonition. In the next moment, Chen Jia was thrown into the air. His body quickly left the ground, as if he was weightless, and flew into the sky. The originally tall tree next to him shrunk in the blink of an eye. Previously, he could only see the top of the tree when he looked up, but now he could see a large area when he lowered his head. As a member of the drumming tribe who was used to living on wet land and in water-bathing areas, he had a natural fear of the sky. They could explode with powerful fighting strength on land, and could smoothly chase after prey in the water. But the sky? Last time, Chen Jia was in a desperate situation and was pulled up by Xiao Xian from the bottom of the river. At that time, he didn't pay attention to the situation below, nor did he think that something was wrong. Moreover, at that time, he only stared at the riverbank, which was completely different from what he felt now. Compared to the previous batch, Chen Jia didn't experience the stage of safely flying, and was directly thrown out. Looking at the ground getting farther and farther away, Chen Jia felt a sense of dizziness. Completely out of conditioned reflex, he opened his mouth and shouted. Chen Jia, who had always thought of himself as incomparably brave, was actually frightened to the point of crying out, and almost wet himself. His cry was so miserable. The people of the Yanjiao tribe, compared to other tribes, were much stronger. In the past, Xiao Xian thought that people in this world were all like this. But after coming to the drumming tribe and seeing the people of the drumming tribe, he realized that this wasn't the case. Therefore, the people of the drumming tribe, who always thought that they were strong and powerful, would never have thought that Xiao Xian would casually throw Chen Jia and the basket of water moonstones into the air. When Cha-Cha was young, he had played a similar game with Cha-Cha. The difference was that this time, it wasn't stones or animal skin bags that were thrown out, but people. Of course, to Cha-Cha, there wasn't much of a difference between the two games. The only difference was that this time, it used its back to catch them, and not its claws. At first, Chen Jia didn't react. After landing on Cha-Cha's back, he didn't even have time to grab onto Cha-Cha's feathers before he rolled down from Cha-Cha's back. When Cha-Cha caught him again, he remembered that Xiao Xian had told them to hold on tightly to the bird's back. In order to not fall to his death, Chen Jia quickly grabbed onto Cha-Cha's feathers. Because he used too much strength, he almost pulled out all the feathers. Cha-Cha was so angry that it let out a loud cry, thinking that when the time came, it would catch this group of people and throw them around for fun. Seeing that Chen Jia was safely on Cha-Cha's back, Xiao Xian tilted his head and looked at the other 4 children. The 4 people who were standing in the same place with sluggish expressions noticed Xiao Xian's gaze and simultaneously took a step back. "Either you get killed or come here," Xiao Xian said. The 4 of them were still somewhat hesitant. "Can you guys be more cowardly than Chen Jia?" Xiao Xian said provokingly. Finally, one of the children clenched his teeth and braced himself as he walked towards Xiao Xian. Thus, the second person who screamed was heard. Then a third, a fourth, until the 5th child was thrown into the air by Xiao Xian and caught by Cha-Cha. Only then was this matter considered a complete success. As long as it was a success, it didn't matter how it was done. After the 5 children were taken away by Cha-Cha, Xiao Xian and Qing Yi's burden was greatly reduced. While heading towards the chief's side, they also cleaned up the hidden people. Along the way, they met a group of drumming tribe warriors who were responsible for finding and cleaning up the hidden people. After Qing Yi told them about what he saw, they separated. Qing Yi brought Xiao Xian to the core area of the drumming tribe, which was also the place Xiao Xian went to on his first day here. There were already quite a few people brought here. Most of them were young children and old people. After completing this task, Qing Yi followed another group to patrol the tribe, continuing to clean up the hidden enemies. Xiao Xian was called over by the shaman. After all, Xiao Xian wasn't a member of the drumming tribe, and the shaman had the intention of having a good relationship with the Yanjiao tribe, so he couldn't let Xiao Xian participate in the battle. Xiao Xian had already helped enough. This was a battle that belonged to the drumming tribe, so there was no need to involve others. Since he couldn't participate in the battle, Xiao Xian helped treat the injured. He still had some prepared medicine in his animal skin bag, which he boiled for the injured to drink. For this, the people of the drumming tribe were very grateful to Xiao Xian. The shaman also promised that if the Yanjiao tribe needed help one day, they would do their best to help. This was what Xiao Xian wanted. Helping the drumming tribe was also helping the Yanjiao tribe. With the drumming tribe here, the Yanjiao tribe would have an easier time coming over. This battle, from the night when the 2 moons overlapped, to the next day when the moon disappeared and the sun reappeared, it still didn't stop. Unlike the Yanjiao people who were relaxed today, the people of the drumming tribe were still fighting hard. There were many corpses in the tribe, some from the drumming tribe, and some from the drumming tribe. Especially in the outer area, many pools were dyed red. Broken limbs and pieces of flesh could be seen everywhere. Fortunately, the drumming tribe had the advantage in numbers, and this was their own territory, so they were well prepared and had the upper hand. A day passed, and the sun set. The battle gradually cooled down. In the sky, the 2 moons were separating. In the woods and around the pools, there were still some people of the drumming tribe. They were getting more and more anxious and wanted to run, but they were blocked by the people outside. This time, the drumming tribe was determined to keep these people here to comfort their comrades who had died in this battle. Xiao Xian, who had just helped carry the injured, came out of the house and saw the shaman standing in the open space, looking in a direction in a daze. That was the direction of the river. And the shaman's face gradually showed a trace of a smile. At the same time, Xiao Xian felt the ground under his feet shake, and the pool around him rippled. The shaking became more and more violent, and the familiar sound of thousands of horses galloping came from afar. The air humidity increased, and the water vapor increased. The wind began to blow fiercely, as if it was going to blow off the roof. Some of the wooden planks in the house were swept away, but no one cared about that. Everyone in the drumming tribe had a happy expression on their faces. Those emotionless eyes were now shining with tears. The rumbling sound, the violent shaking of the ground, and the water vapor in the air all meant that the disappeared river was about to rise again. Woo! The return of the kings of the river announced the arrival of changes. The creatures that left during the rainy season all came back with the river. When the kings of the river swam deeper into the river, everything gradually calmed down. A huge claw stepped on the riverbank, and a huge body that was over 10 meters long emerged from the water. A rumbling sound came from its big mouth, like rolling thunder. At the same time, it looked around, probably sensing the abnormal factors in the surrounding environment. Soon, it seemed to have found something that made it very angry. A roar came from the riverbank, spreading far away. Around it, there were many of its companions. Like it, its huge body quickly entered the tributary. In the tributary that was expanding due to the rise of the river, a group of big guys was quickly approaching the tribe. They were responsible for cleaning up the battlefield. Chapter 164. The two moons in the sky were separating, and the earth was still covered with a layer of silver light at night. A figure staggered out from the forest. Probably because his head was hit, half of his face was stained with blood. He felt his vision was a little blurry. Blood flowed into his eyes, but he didn't wipe it away. His head hurt, but he didn't care. What did they come here for? That's right, they came to kill people. Kill the people of the drumming tribe, and then steal their water moon stones. Sneak in, kill, steal. What else was there? He thought as he walked. There were many small puddles of different depths on the ground. The sound of his feet stepping into the puddles was very clear, and the splashing muddy water reflected the moonlight. Until he walked to the side of a river, his remaining consciousness made him stop before he fell into the river. Looking at the river in front of him, he gradually remembered some things he was told before invading the drumming tribe. When the river rises, you have to evacuate quickly. Once the river rises, you can't get close to any ponds or rivers in the drumming tribe. Remember, the river in front of him was less than 10 meters wide. It wasn't a big river in this area, at most a tributary of the tributaries. However, the river level did rise. When the river rises, you can't get close to ponds or rivers. Can't get close. Thinking of this, he suddenly quivered and quickly stepped back. However, he only took a step back when a figure quickly rushed out from the river. A huge mouth came biting towards him. The mouth was covered in hard scales, and the huge jaw had thick, cone-shaped teeth that made people shudder. There seemed to be some meat residue between the teeth, and there was also the smell of blood that had not yet dissipated. This was the last thing he saw. The next second, he was bitten and dragged into the water. The conical teeth instantly pierced his internal organs. Before he was dragged into the water, he was already bitten to death. In the river, there were other crocodiles gathering here. They bit the food, rolled around, cut the food into pieces, and then swallowed it clean. In the drumming tribe, similar things happened in many places. Those who stayed in the drumming tribe were lucky enough to escape with their lives, but those who ran slower would be killed by the drumming tribe and the adult crocodiles. In the end, they would become the crocodiles' food. The corpses left behind from the previous battle were gradually decreasing. However, the ones who were decreasing were the people of the drumming tribe. These outsiders had become food for the returning crocodiles. The small crocodiles that had been crying for a few days now stopped. Some even crawled into the water and went to other places to clean up the trash with the big crocodiles. To the drumming tribe, these crocodiles were treasured fish, but to the others, they were a nightmare. Xueqi stood there and watched the crocodiles pass by. These crocodiles that came back from the river, the big ones were more than 10 meters tall, and the small ones were no less than 3 meters. Some swam to other places in the river, and some walked directly through the wetland. Although their walking speed was not fast, they looked murderous. Their eyes were similar to those of the drumming tribe. When these crocodiles that had disappeared for a while returned, the people of the drumming tribe were very excited. This meant that this year's war would end. In the drumming tribe's territory, the best guards were actually these crocodiles. These crocodiles wouldn't harm the people of the drumming tribe. Even if they were no longer breathing, they wouldn't bite them. However, the other tribes didn't have such good treatment. They were completely treated as food and eaten in a very cruel way. As an outsider, Xueqi naturally did not dare to run around at this time. He stood together with the people of the drumming tribe. A few steps away, the shaman of the drumming tribe stood. A crocodile that was more than 15 meters long passed by Xueqi. It probably noticed that Xueqi was different, so it approached and opened its mouth toward Xueqi. A low growl came from its throat. It was suspecting Xiao Xian's identity. Its cold eyes were filled with killing intent, as if it would mercilessly bite him in the next moment. However, after the shaman said a few words that Xiao Xian did not understand, the crocodile left. "Take this." The shaman handed Xiao Xian a bone plate with the drumming tribe's totem pattern on it. Xiao Xian took it. With this, no matter where he went, the crocodiles would not treat him as an enemy. Moreover, this bone plate was only in the hands of the shaman. It was made temporarily, unlike the chief's plate, which could not be faked. When the moon disappeared and the sun came out, there were no longer any living invaders in the drumming tribe's territory. Xiao Xian brought Chen Jia back. Along the way, they could see many large and small crocodiles in the pool. They were rolling around in the pool, tearing apart people whose faces could no longer be seen. The pool had already been dyed red with blood. However, whether it was Chen Jia or the other children of the tribe, even the children who were only 2 or 3 years old, they were not surprised at all. Some were even cheering at the side. It was not that they were innately cold, but that they were already used to it. The closer they got to home, the faster Chen Jia's steps became. He did not even care about the water moonstones. Xiao Xian helped him carry the rattan basket, but he did not care much. Right now, he just wanted to see if his father and mother had returned home safely. "Mother!" Chen Jia shouted and quickly ran over. Xiao Xian looked over. Ping was standing in the house, looking out of the window. "Are you okay?" Ping ran out and looked at Chen Jia, then looked at Xiao Xian. No matter if it was Chen Jia or Xiao Xian, there were bloodstains on their bodies. However, this was not their blood. After checking that there were no injuries, Ping happily said, "Quickly go in, I'll prepare something to eat." Since Ping was so happy, it was obvious that Fu Shi was also fine. Fu Shi was resting in the house. Although there were many injuries on his body, it was enough to keep his life. After seeing the rattan basket that Xiao Xian carried over, Fu Shi and his wife could not suppress the joy on their faces. Their mouths split open, and that big mouth looked quite scary. If not for this period of time, Xiao Xian had a better understanding of them. He would definitely have the same thought as the other tribesmen. The drumming tribe was really scary. Letting the family of 3 interact more, Xiao Xian came out to look around. He heard the crocodile cry, but it was not because it was afraid. The sound it made was different from before. Next to the pond in front of Chen Jia's house, an 8-meter-long crocodile walked over and climbed into the pond. Its eyes were yellowish-brown, and when it looked at people, it was always cold, making people feel cold. After it entered the pond, it picked up the small crocodile and swam from one side of the pond to the other. Those cone-shaped teeth that could easily tear a person's arm off, when it held the small crocodile in its mouth, it did not have any killing power. Instead, it protected the small crocodile. This was also an animal that knew how to protect its young. Previously, the person who was trapped by Xiao Xian's trap and had his neck broken by Qing Yi had his corpse taken away. He was not left here to be fed to the crocodiles. Xiao Xian knew that the person's identity was definitely special, and he was not a member of the drumming tribe. In the drumming tribe, people and crocodiles lived in harmony. The real situation was like this, without much intimacy, but they would not harm each other. The invaders were their common enemy. "What?" Xiao Xian was looking at the crocodiles when he heard Ping cry out in surprise. "What's wrong?" Xiao Xian walked into the house and asked. "Sai, I just heard that someone's water moonstone was stolen," Ping said. Some people in the tribe were busy fighting because of the drumming tribe's invasion and did not pay close attention. Now that everything was over, they cleaned up the water moonstones in the rattan basket. It was clearly wrapped in the animal skin bag, but when they opened it again, they found that it was missing a lot. The animal skin bag was not broken, and the rattan basket was not damaged. Only the water moonstones were missing. "It must be a thief. Only they have that ability," Fu Shi said hatefully. After hearing this, Ping hurriedly opened the rattan basket to check. Her family's harvest this year was not small. If it was stolen, it would be a great loss. Most of the time, the rattan basket was carried by Chen Jia. When Chen Jia was not looking, it was Xiao Xian who was looking. "Good, it's not lost." After checking, Ping let out a sigh of relief. These water moonstones were what they relied on for the next year. All right. Ping originally wanted to wrap the water moonstones again, but when she saw Xiao Xian next to her, she remembered. She took out some water moonstones from the rattan basket and put them into another animal skin bag. Then she handed it to Xueqi. Thank you, Xueqi. Many people in the drumming tribe were not good with words. Fu Shi also seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he could only scratch his head and swallow his words. He did not know how to thank Xueqi, but when he thought of the advice given by the other tribes during the trade, he tried to show the most sincere smile. Thus, when he looked at Xueqi, his mouth was wide open. Xueqi. Retracting his gaze from the other side, Xueqi pushed the animal skin bag. I don't need so much. Xueqi found that Ping took out at least 1/5 of the water moonstones. Don't look down on this 1/5. This was money that could be exchanged for a lot of things. Take it. Ping stuffed the animal skin bag into Xueqi's hands and said, after this matter is over, we will start the trade. When the time comes, you can go out with Fu Shi. You will need it. It's your first time out, so there are a lot of things you don't understand. Seeing that he could not refuse, Xueqi took the animal skin bag. Moreover, if he went out to trade, he would need it. Where do we usually go to trade? Other tribes? Xueqi asked. For small trades, sometimes we go to the Luo tribe, sometimes to the Pu tribe, and other tribes. However, for big trades we have to go to the trading ground. Ping explained. Fu Shi understood this better. Every time their family went out to trade, he was the one in charge. The closest tribe to our tribe is the Pu tribe. This time, we will most likely go there. The people of the Pu tribe have a lot of good things in their hands. Stones, pottery, and some medicine. They are all very good things. Xueqi remembered Fu Shi's words in his heart. These were all things he needed to understand. Because in the ancestors' animal skin roll, there was no mention of the Pu tribe. Chapter 165. After the end of the war, the drumming tribe returned to normal. The tribe held a ceremony for the dead warriors, but Xueqi wasn't from the drumming tribe and couldn't participate in the ceremony, so he didn't see the fire seed of the drumming tribe. That day, he stayed at Chen Jia's house and felt the energy of the fire seed. It was different from the energy of the Yanjiao tribe's fire seed. This energy was much stronger. This was probably what the shaman said about the difference between a complete totem and an incomplete totem. The energy of the Yanjiao tribe's fire seed gave people a warm feeling, but the drumming tribe's fire seed gave people a slightly cool feeling. It wasn't cold, but it was slightly cooler than the Yanjiao tribe's fire seed. Even though he was curious about the drumming tribe's fire seed, Xueqi couldn't go and see it. Only when he talked with Fu Shi and the others did he know that their fire pit was actually a waterhole. The bodies of the dead warriors would also be sent to that waterhole. Hearing this, it was a very magical thing. If there was a chance, Xueqi really wanted to see the drumming tribe's fire pit with his own eyes. After the funeral ceremony, the tribe became lively again. Everyone was looking forward to the next trade, just like rich people who had just earned a large sum of money and were thinking about how to spend it. The drumming tribe's healing ability was slightly slower than the Yanjiao tribe's, but overall, it wasn't bad. When the totem patterns covered their whole body, it was like a layer of scales covering them, giving them a certain amount of protection. The drumming tribe also knew that, because of this, their attitude towards Xueqi was very warm. When they heard that Xueqi was going to go out with the trading team, they all imparted their experiences to Xueqi, telling him how to choose, how to trade, what the price of each item was, etc. The young ladies of the drumming tribe, who looked cold but were actually passionate, often ran to Xueqi's side and showed their brightest smiles. Every time he faced this kind of enthusiasm, Xueqi's face froze. On the other hand, the men of the drumming tribe were all infatuated with the passionate girls. Sure enough, different tribes had different aesthetic standards. Due to the return of a large number of adult crocodiles, the Cha-Cha viewed the wetlands as a dangerous place. If they could land on a tree, they would definitely not land on the ground. Finally, the day of the trading team's departure arrived. Xueqi took the water moonstone that Ping gave him and left with Cha-Cha. Xueqi, you must come to our tribe to play again. Ping said to Xueqi. All right, I'll definitely come back. The drumming tribe and the Pu tribe were not close. According to Xueqi's understanding, the drumming tribe was located in a remote area. The distribution of tribes here was relatively sparse. Just look at the territory of the drumming tribe. Towards the Pu tribe, they did not walk step by step on the ground, but through the water. On the outskirts of the drumming tribe, there was a river that was more than 10 meters wide. Through this river, the people of the drumming tribe could reach the Pu tribe. The drumming tribe did not have boats. They could make bamboo rafts and wooden rafts. On the few tributaries here, bamboo rafts and wooden rafts could successfully float. However, the people of the drumming tribe did not use them because they had better boats. One after another, crocodiles hung on the water surface. Some only revealed half of their heads, only their eyes and noses could be seen. The crocodiles often hid in the water like this to maintain their concealment. But there were also some that revealed more of their heads. You could clearly see the scales and patterns on their backs. As the leader of the trading team, after receiving the shaman's blessing, Xueqi jumped into the river and landed on the back of a crocodile. The crocodiles lined up together like a pontoon, allowing Xueqi to walk freely on them. The others followed Xueqi and jumped into the river one by one, then stood on the backs of the crocodiles. Fu Shi carried an empty rattan basket on his back and touched the animal skin bag with the water moonstones. He said to Xiao, "Let's go." Xiao did not let Cha lead the way. He wanted to be with the people of the drumming tribe and learn more about the Pu tribe. Fu Shi said a lot of things that were not specific. Xiao could learn more from the conversations of the others. The drumming tribe had thousands of people. Not everyone would participate in this trade. Some temporarily did not need to buy anything, some asked others to help them bring something back, and some waited for their companions to bring something back. Then they would use the water moonstones to exchange for it. After counting the people in the trading team, Xueqi waved his hand, "Let's go." The crocodiles floating on the water swung their tails and began to move forward along the river. Just as they started moving, Xiao heard a cry from behind. Turning his head to look, he saw a crocodile floating on the river where the sending-off team was. Beside it, there was a small crocodile with dark brown eyes. Many people could not hear its cry, so when Xiao turned his head to look, Fu Shi was puzzled. After seeing the small crocodile, Fu Shi grinned, "It's sending us off." Turning his head back, Xiao signaled to Cha in the air to follow. A trading team of more than 200 people, accompanied by more than 100 crocodiles. Although this team did not look like a lot, it was very strange. After all, these crocodiles were not real boats. They would not always stay above the water surface. Sometimes they would even sink a little. The people standing on their backs would have their legs in the water. However, the people of the drumming tribe did not feel uncomfortable. After all, they were also close to the water. Xiao looked at the duckweeds on the water surface. These green plants hid the figures under the water. If one looked at the trading team from the land, it would be like a boat moving on its own. Only the ripples on the water would tell others that there were other creatures under the water. There were other fish in the river, even some dangerous ones. However, with this group of crocodiles, these fish all retreated and ran away. Sometimes they could even see some aquatic animals, as well as other animals playing in the water. Those that should be avoided were avoided, and those that did not need to be avoided were directly passed. These animals would naturally avoid them. Feeling a little itchy on his feet, Xiao moved the spear in his hand. With a splash, a finger-long worm was lifted up by the spearhead. It was a worm with a mouth like a suction cup. Its body was reddish-brown with some fine earthy yellow patterns. Its stomach was slightly bulging. "Be careful, these worms suck blood," Fu Shi, who was standing in front, said. Xiao acted as soon as he sensed it. This worm did not suck Xiao's blood, but he did not know who in the group it belonged to. It seemed that in the river, there were not many big threats, but many small troubles. The river passed through a wetland and came to a mountain ridge. It passed by many towering mountains. For the drumming tribe, these mountains were high enough, but in Xiao's eyes, these mountains were far from the hunting ground and the mountain range near Eagle Mountain. Half a day later, Xiao's vision darkened. The group passed through a narrow channel between two cliffs. Here, the cliffs on both sides blocked most of the light. Only a narrow opening at the top allowed them to see the sky. This narrow channel was especially quiet. The sound of the crocodile's tail swishing could be heard clearly. "After this, we'll reach it," Fu Shi said. The light in front of them was getting closer. When the group came out of the narrow channel, what they saw was completely different from before. In their field of vision, there were large lotus leaves. "From here on, it's the Pu tribe's territory," Fu Shi said. Xiao was about to ask more when he sensed that there was something in the water quickly approaching them. It stopped when it reached the edge of the lotus leaves. The large lotus leaves covered the figure underwater. "Gua!" A frog-like croak was heard. Xiao reflexively took out his knife and was on guard. Whoosh! A figure broke out of the water, but it did not run directly to the drumming tribe's trading team. Instead, it stood on a lotus leaf the size of a small bed. "We're a little late," the person standing on the lotus leaf said to Xueqi, who was in front of the trading team. Chapter 166. Xueqi looked at the man on the lotus leaf. When he heard the croak, he thought of the long-tailed frogs that appeared at the tribe's shore during the rainy season. That was why he immediately pulled out his knife. The man on the lotus leaf was the Pooh tribe's border patrol. He was familiar with the drumming tribe's people who often came here to trade. He was also familiar with Xueqi. Hearing the other party's words, Xueqi helplessly said, "The trouble this time is bigger." Other than the drumming tribe's people, there were also people from other tribes involved, but Xueqi didn't say this. He wouldn't easily tell others. The man on the lotus leaf nodded. He also received the news that the invaders came from the drumming tribe. Xueqi and the others needed more time to recuperate after the battle, so they naturally came later. His gaze swept over the drumming tribe's team, stopping on Xueqi. Who is he? The drumming tribe's people's characteristics were very obvious. He didn't need to look too much to recognize the person who was obviously different from the others. A guest from the drumming tribe, from the Yanjiao tribe. His name is Xueqi. Xueqi introduced. The person standing on the lotus leaf narrowed his eyes and scanned Xueqi's body, as if trying to determine if this stranger was a threat. As for the Yanjiao tribe, it was probably an unknown small tribe. There were too many small tribes in this world, so they didn't need to remember them one by one. However, for a guest from the drumming tribe, they still had to give some face. After all, the drumming tribe's people were very rich. Especially after the 2 moons, it was the harvest season for the drumming tribe. There were baskets of water moonstones. For such a wealthy trader, the Pooh tribe welcomed him very much. "Let's go, everyone has been waiting for a long time." The man on the lotus leaf jumped back a few steps to another lotus leaf. His cheeks puffed up like a frog, making a croak sound. Not long after the sound was made, Xueqi felt something moving under the water. Standing in the water, he could feel the waves. At the same time, in front of the drumming tribe's trading team, which was originally full of lotus leaves and couldn't see anything else, now those tall lotus leaves were tilted to both sides, revealing a waterway in the middle. "Let's go." Xueqi led the crocodile forward along the waterway. The other people in the trading team followed suit. The lotus leaves here were very large. The stems of the lotus leaves, which were thicker than a person's thigh, were exposed above the water. The green stems of the lotus leaves were covered with thorns. If someone tried to force their way through, the thorns on the stems of the lotus leaves would cut off their flesh. Unlike the muddy ponds of the drumming tribe, the river here was clearer, but the surface of the water was covered with duckweed, making it difficult to see the situation under the water. When the crocodile swam past, the duckweed would be pushed away by the waves. When the waves rippled, Xueqi could see many green frogs hiding in the duckweed under the lotus leaves. Those who were more timid would run away immediately, kicking the water surface vigorously and swimming away in the standard frog style. As for the braver ones, they remained in their original positions with half of their heads exposed. Their 2 round eyes stared at the people passing through the waterway. Their horizontal pupils were like slits, but they did not have the coldness of a crocodile. Instead, they gave people the feeling that they were smiling. From time to time, there would be frog calls, either near or far. They are the people of the Pooh tribe. The one who talked to Xueqi is called Pooh Yi. He is in charge of the border patrol and defense of the Pooh tribe. Fu Shi said to Xueqi. Pooh Yi jumped on a lotus leaf not far away. He wasn't wearing any beast skin clothes, so the drawings on his body were exposed. They weren't totem patterns, but patterns drawn with a special pigment. They wouldn't be washed off by water. At the same time, when Pooh Yi and Xueqi were talking, Xueqi also noticed that Pooh Yi had some drawings around his eyes. These were the preferences of the Pooh tribe. People with different preferences would draw different patterns around their eyes. This was the custom of the Pooh tribe, passed down from their ancestors. Pooh Yi jumped from one lotus leaf to another. Sometimes because of his jump, the dew on the lotus leaf would flow down with the tilt of the lotus leaf, falling into the water and making a dripping sound. Under the water, there were many warriors like Pooh Yi who were in charge of border patrol. They pulled the lotus leaves to both sides, opening up a waterway. No matter if it was the people of the Pooh tribe or the drumming tribe, they were all excellent swimmers. Following the waterway opened up by the Pooh tribe, the trading team moved forward. As they continued to move forward, Xueqi could feel the temperature gradually rising. There was no longer the cold of the mountains, but it became warm and humid. If you stood at a high place, you could see everything green. Green lotus leaves, green duckweed, and dense green forests on both sides of the river. The frog calls around them became more and more frequent, proving that there were more and more frogs around. Fortunately, Xueqi did not find any long-tailed giant frogs in the river. The totem of the Pooh tribe was a frog. This also proved that they had a close relationship with frogs. Here, anyone who killed frogs for no reason would be punished by the Pooh tribe. The Cha-Cha did not enter the territory of the Pooh tribe. Instead, they wandered around the border. Without the permission of the Pooh tribe, they would be attacked as invaders. The people of the Pooh tribe were good at using poison. Following the waterway for a while, Xueqi heard people cheering. "They are here! Quick! The people of the drumming tribe are here! Father, the trading team is here! Quickly take out the things!" Some of the voices came from the shore, while others came from the lotus leaves above. Looking from the water surface, on the big umbrella-like lotus leaves, one could see a moving shadow. "You are still very popular," Xueqi said to Fu Shi. "Of course we often come to trade with them. We all know each other and have a good relationship." Haha. Fu Shi rarely heard people say that his tribe was popular. He felt very happy. Only Xueqi and a few others' faces twitched. Of course they were popular. They were the important customers of the Pooh tribe. Without the drumming tribe, most of the people of the Pooh tribe would immediately live in poverty. Following the opened waterway, the team turned a corner. In front of them was the riverbank. On the riverbank, there were already many people of the Pooh tribe waiting. Big and small, young and old, each and every one of them was smiling, until their mouths cracked. Different from the fierce, bloody mouth of the drumming tribe, although the people of the Pooh tribe had big mouths, many of them had slightly upturned mouths. Coupled with the shape of their jaws, they did not look as stiff as the people of the drumming tribe. They gave people a feeling that they were much more enthusiastic. In addition to their mouths, the people of the Pooh tribe generally had big eyes. Coupled with their unique customs, everyone's eyes were painted with patterns. According to the warriors of the drumming tribe who often came out to trade, they could judge the character of the people of the Pooh tribe based on those patterns. And the experienced old warriors gave Xueqi advice. Stay away from those with very colorful patterns. Those people were very dangerous. Just like some colorful frogs, the more colorful they were, the more likely they were poisonous. "Ha, you finally came." A middle-aged man walked forward a few steps and greeted Xueqi and a few others. "Is everything ready?" Xueqi stepped onto the shore and walked with the man towards the Pooh tribe. "It's been ready for a long time. We've been waiting for 2 days." Xueqi followed Fu Shi and a few others to the shore. As for the crocodiles used as boats, they would rest in the surrounding river. The people of the Pooh tribe would take care of them. An auntie wearing an animal skin coat, carrying a large wooden plate, walked over with a smile. "Welcome to the Pooh tribe. Here, freshly roasted." Xueqi looked around. There was a large plate of roasted insects. Every one of them died with their eyes wide open. Xueqi. Really enthusiastic. Fu Shi and the others were already used to it. They reached into the wooden plate and grabbed a handful of things to eat. Seeing that Xueqi didn't move, Fu Shi and a few others recommended, "Xueqi, the Pooh tribe's roasted things are not bad. You can try it. Once you leave, it will be hard to eat it again." Xueqi stared at the insects that died with their eyes wide open for a few seconds. He reached out his hand to grab one that looked like it still had all 4 limbs. But he didn't expect the auntie to be so enthusiastic. She directly grabbed a handful and stuffed it into Xueqi's hand. "Xueqi. Thank you." Although it looked terrible, the taste was just like what Fu Shi said. It was good to eat, if you ignored the appearance. In the Pooh tribe's village, the houses in the residential area were not big. They were made with branches and leaves. Some were in an oval shape with an opening on the side. Some were in a large triangular shape. There was no fixed shape. It looked very artistic. It wasn't that they didn't have the ability to build bigger and stronger houses. It was just that their habits and preferences made them more inclined towards this kind of building style. At noon, the sun was too strong. Some people even folded lotus leaves and used them as umbrellas. Because there was still Cha-Cha's matter, Qing let the others trade first. He brought Xian to the Pu tribe's chief. The Pu tribe's shaman often stayed in his cave and rarely came out. Every time the drumming tribe people came to the Pu tribe, they would see the Pu tribe's chief, Guang Ho. The place where Guang Ho lived was in the central area of the Pu tribe. Because the people here lived more densely, they didn't have to walk too far to reach Guang Ho's house. It was a pointed wooden house with a roof made of grass and leaves. The door was open and the person at the door indicated that they could go in. After entering the house, the first thing Xian saw was a lump of meat sitting in the front. That was the Pu tribe's chief, Guang Ho. Guang Ho's eyebrows were protruding like two horns. Around his eyes were some yellowish-green and black stripes. Compared to the other people in the Yanjiao tribe, Guang Ho's appearance was more ferocious. Because his body was slightly bigger, he looked like a meat dumpling. It was very oppressive. At this moment, Guang Ho was sitting there. His thick and fat hands were holding an unknown animal and eating. Seeing Xian come in, Guang Ho's eyes narrowed. He looked at Xian and his mouth didn't stop eating. "You are from the Yanjiao tribe?" Guang Ho asked. "Indeed. Yanjiao tribe. I seem to have heard of it," Guang Ho said. Chapter 167. Hearing Guang Ho say that he had some impression of the Yanjiao tribe, Xian was happy. But the next moment, Guang Ho said, "If I remember correctly, your totem is a fish, right?" Xian was silent for a few seconds, then handed over the stone card the shaman gave him. "This is our tribe's totem. I have come with the goodwill of the Yanjiao tribe. I am very happy to meet you." Guang Ho didn't care. He took the stone card with the totem pattern drawn on it from Xian and looked at it. He didn't have any impression of it, so he handed the stone card back. He smiled so much that his chin folded into several layers. He said to Xian, "I still believe in the guests of the drumming tribe." Xian told Guang Ho the purpose of his visit, and told him about the cha-cha that was staying at the border of the Pu tribe. Unfortunately, although Guang Ho looked more amiable than the chief of the drumming tribe, he refused immediately. "The bird you mentioned just now, I don't want it to enter this territory. In the past, very few large birds came here, and we don't have a good impression of birds. Many aquatic animals didn't like birds that came from the sky." Xian knew this, and he could also see that Guang Ho didn't care about him. It was only because of Qing that he said a few words. Otherwise, he wouldn't even bother to look at Xian. While he was talking to Xian, Guang Ho had already looked at the food on the side a few times. After the conversation, Xian said goodbye and left. Before he entered the Pu tribe, he had told the cha-cha that if it heard the whistle for permission, it should come over. If it heard the whistle for refusal, it could move freely outside. Maybe the cha-cha was happy to play outside, but there were more restrictions in the tribe. After leaving Guang Ho's house, Qing said apologetically, "I didn't help." "It's okay, the cha-cha is more free outside. Wait for me to go out and call it." As for Guang Ho's attitude, Xian didn't think too much about it. He didn't want to get anything from the Pu tribe, he just wanted to see more of the tribes other than the Yanjiao tribe. However, why hadn't the drumming tribe and the Pu tribe heard of the name Yanjiao tribe? According to the records and words left behind by the ancestors, it could be seen that the ancestors were still very proud. They were also very proud of the former Flaming Horns tribe, which showed that the Flaming Horns tribe was not a small border group in the past. Perhaps it was because too much time had passed that everything had changed? After leaving Guang Ho's place, Xian parted ways with Qing. Qing needed to go shopping, and the chief and shamaness gave him a list of things he needed to buy. Si Ho, Hope, the Yong tribe, the tribe, Yen Ho Hos. Ho originally, Xian thought that the Pu tribe and the drumming tribe's trade fair would be like a market, but now it seemed that it wasn't. They didn't place their items in one place. The Pu tribe people only placed their items outside their houses, so if they saw something placed outside their houses, it would be used for trade. If they liked it, they would go and buy it. Here, there was no unified currency. They used equivalent exchange. However, it couldn't be considered as an equivalent exchange. Xian didn't walk far when he saw several people from the drumming tribe who were buying without haggling. Then he looked at the people from the Pu tribe who were smiling. It was obvious that they had gained a lot from trading with the drumming tribe. No wonder the Pu tribe people were looking forward to the arrival of the drumming tribe's trading team. No wonder they were so enthusiastic. The drumming tribe people looked very fierce, but in fact, they didn't have many other thoughts. In the eyes of the Pooh tribe people, to put it bluntly, the drumming tribe people were just stupid people with money. Before coming, Xiao Xian heard Fu Shi complain about why the drumming tribe people weren't welcomed outside. Why were the Pooh tribe people more welcomed by other tribes than them? On one hand, the drumming tribe people had bad tempers. On the other hand, it was because they weren't very smart and didn't know how to talk. They weren't as good as the Pooh tribe people. Of course, this also had to do with their faces. Every time the drumming tribe people went out, they would be treated as people with bad intentions. Because they looked too fierce, especially when they looked at people, it was like a cold knife cutting through people. On the other hand, the Pooh tribe people made people feel more amiable. Look at their smiles. How warm. As he walked, Xiao Xian paid attention to the surrounding houses that displayed all kinds of items. Pottery, stone cores, and all kinds of strange things from other tribes. The old people in the tribe treated the pottery as treasures. They could also be seen here, but the price was very high. What made Xiao Xian surprised was that he also saw a piece of linen. You like it? This is from the central region. I heard that the people in the central region love to use this kind of cloth to make clothes. The man said proudly. He was wearing a short skirt made of linen, which he showed off in the tribe. Although many people didn't like this kind of thing, once they heard that it was from the central region, their attitude immediately changed. Therefore, when this man said it, he didn't use too many words to embellish it. He only emphasized the words from the central region, waiting for Xiao Xian to show a look of surprise, and then use a lot of water moonstones to exchange for it. Unfortunately, he was disappointed. Xiao Xian only calmly asked about the central region, and then gave him a small piece of water moonstone as a reward and left. After Xiao Xian left, the man looked at the small piece of water moonstone in his hand. Although this piece was already a big profit, he was still not reconciled. Why didn't he keep him? That was something he had painstakingly obtained from the central region. This kid didn't even show a look of surprise. Could it be that he hadn't seen it before? Or did he know that he didn't have the money to buy such an expensive thing? Xiao Xian didn't know that in the eyes of the shopkeeper just now, he had already become a poor country bumpkin. In Xiao Xian's eyes, that piece of linen was very coarse, and wouldn't be more comfortable to wear than animal skin. Using a large piece of water moonstone to buy such a coarse piece of cloth, was he stupid? Not long after, that piece of linen was bought by Fu Shi, one of the local tycoons of the drumming tribe this year. Xiao Xian didn't speak for a long time after seeing this. Sure enough, their values were different. Perhaps, the two words central region was already the biggest golden signboard. Looking at Fu Shi's happy face, then looking at the envy of the other people of the drumming tribe, Xiao Xian felt that he still hadn't fully adapted to the rhythm of this place. What kind of place was the central region? Was it more developed than here? Was the Yanjiao tribe in the central region in the past? It was said that the colored pottery came from there. Because it was fragile during the transportation process, the colored pottery transported here was very expensive. Among the nearby tribes that often came to the Pooh tribe to participate in the trade, only the drumming tribe bought the most of it. Touching the water moonstone in the animal skin bag, this was really a good thing, comparable to gold. After staying in the Yanjiao tribe for so long, he had forgotten the benefits of money. The people of the drumming tribe didn't know much about the central region. They only knew that the things from the central region were very good, so every time they came, whenever they heard that something came from the central region, they would immediately take out their animal skin bags to buy it, not even asking for a price. In addition to these, the Pooh tribe also had many local specialties, such as frogs. Of course, this didn't mean that they would sell the frogs. For the Pooh tribe who used frogs as totems, they wouldn't kill the frogs here. What they sold were things taken from the frogs, such as poison, medicine, and other special things. Xiao Xian came to an oval-shaped house. This place was a bit remote, so not many people of the drumming tribe came here to trade. An old man sat cross-legged on the ground in front of the door. In front of him, there were no pottery, stone tools, or things from other tribes, only a few frogs with different shapes, sizes, colors, and patterns. Next to him was a large basin of water. After a while, the old man reached out and scooped water from the basin, sprinkling it on the frogs in front of him. When Xiao Xian came over, the old man had just finished sprinkling the water. Seeing Xiao Xian come over, the old man's eyes lit up. "What do you want?" "These are Xiao Xian pointed at the frogs lying motionless in front of the old man and asked, "You're not from the drumming tribe? Is this your first time in our tribe?" The old man didn't feel disappointed because Xiao Xian wasn't from the drumming tribe. Instead, he smiled very happily, because once the people of the drumming tribe bought something, they would first choose the same place as last time. This place was a bit remote, so the old man rarely met people from the drumming tribe when trading. Instead, he was more interested in customers from other tribes. "Yes, it's my first time in the Pooh tribe," Xiao Xian said, his eyes staring at the frogs on the ground. A few frogs, the small ones were only the size of a fingernail, and the big ones couldn't even be held by a palm. The old man enthusiastically introduced the characteristics of these frogs to Xiao Xian, as well as the things they could contribute. This one's body can be used to save people. Dizziness, chest tightness, vomiting, body weakness and so on can be treated. And this one, its body can be used to firmly stick two planks together. As he said this, the old man made a goo-goob sound, then held a thick leaf and waited. Xiao Xian looked at the orange-patterned frog. At this moment, its pupils shrank. Because it was horizontal, it looked like it was squinting, as if it was preparing something. After waiting for a few seconds, nothing happened. Xiao Xian looked at the old man, then at the frog on the ground. Was this frog constipated? Just as he was thinking, Xiao Xian saw the orange-patterned frog secreting some translucent liquid from its back. As the liquid increased, the old man quickly used the thick leaf in his hand to scrape the liquid off. The leaf wouldn't hurt the frog, so the Pooh tribe often used this method to get the liquid. "Look." The old man took out 2 wooden blocks, then smeared some of the liquid on the thick leaf. The wooden blocks closed, and after a while, the 2 wooden blocks were firmly stuck together. This thing was simply the same as the glue that the Flaming Horns tribe found to be used to glue things together. "How many of these do you have?" Xiao Xian asked. "As many as you want." The old man was so excited that his hands were shaking. "What are the others?" Xiao Xian let the old man continue to introduce them. He was very interested in these things. The old man was also in high spirits as he explained to Xiao Xian one by one. There were all kinds of strange frog secretions. There was also a frog that secreted oil on its skin, which was preferred by some people in arid areas. These frogs, for the Pooh tribe, were simply a tool to make money. Because the old man had some stock at home, Xiao Xian took out the water moonstones, and according to the old man's price, selectively bought some. "Right, do you sell frog poison here?" Xiao Xian asked. "You want?" The old man carefully looked around, then said to Xiao Xian, "Of course, follow me." Chapter 168. The old man looked around as if he was guarding against a thief. He quickly tidied up the things in the house and called out twice. The frogs that were originally lying quietly on the ground by the door all jumped away. Some ran into the forest, while others ran towards the river. After tidying up, the old man pulled Xiao Xian in one direction. While walking, he explained to Xiao Xian in a low voice, "You want frog poison, so naturally you want frog poison with good effects. My grandson can get it for you. You can have whatever you want." The old man was afraid that Xiao Xian would change his mind and turn around to leave, so he kept talking to Xiao Xian. He was afraid that Xiao Xian would find it troublesome and go to other people's houses to buy. After all, there were many people in the Pooh tribe who sold frog poison. For example, many people in the drumming tribe liked to buy tools that had already been smeared with frog poison. They would directly wrap it up, stuff it into a basket, and leave after paying some water moonstones. What the old man wanted to do now was to take Xiao Xian to get it on the spot. Compared to other people, it was a bit more troublesome. Xiao Xian didn't think much of it. As long as he could get what he wanted, he didn't mind if it was a bit troublesome. Moreover, after seeing the things that the old man scraped from the frogs, he was quite curious. In the past, when he was in the Yanjiao tribe when he went out to hunt, the warriors also liked to use some things that came from animals. They used those poisons to smear the weapons in their hands, such as spearheads, bows and so on. Among them, there were various kinds of poisons. Frog poison was more commonly used. When the Yanjiao tribesmen took frog poison, they would first kill the frog, then roast the dead frog over a fire. As they roasted, the poison would slowly seep out from the frog's glands. After the frog poison came out, as long as they took the weapon and smeared it back and forth on the frog's body, the desired effect would be achieved. 4 poisonous frogs, The warriors only needed to smear a bit of frog poison on their weapons to hunt prey. Generally, wild beasts that were poisoned by frog poison would die very quickly. Ferocious beasts had stronger resistance and wouldn't die, but their movements would be affected. We're almost there. Don't worry, the old man said hurriedly. Xueqi was not in a hurry, but the old man next to him was. He pulled Xueqi to a place by the river. Looking at the big lotus leaves in the river, he shouted, "Hey, are you there?" The lotus leaves on the surface of the river swayed with the wind. Some frogs in the river croaked, but there was no human voice. The old man was so angry that his beard trembled a few times. He said again, "Come out, I see you." Still, no one answered. The old man took a deep breath and roared, "Get out here! I know you're here." Finally, a helpless reply came from a cluster of lotus leaves not far away. "Yes, Grandpa. What's the matter?" A figure jumped out from the lotus leaves and landed on a large lotus leaf by the riverbank. He glanced at Xueqi and then looked at the old man. "Grandpa, you can sell whatever you want. Why did you call me? I'm still sleeping." "Why are you sleeping?" The old man's eyes bulged as if they were going to pop out. "Come here, this young man from another tribe wants to buy frog poison. There are so many frog poisons in the tribe. It doesn't matter where I buy them. Grandpa, I remember you collected several jars at home." Zhao yawned and said. The old man stopped breathing and mumbled. He didn't look at Xueqi and wasn't afraid of the thorns on the stem of the lotus leaf. He bent his arm and picked up the stem. "Come down. Sleeping all day, are you in a hurry to get through the winter?" Zhao had no choice but to jump down from the lotus leaf. His eyes were half closed as if he hadn't woken up yet. He looked at Xueqi. "You want to buy frog poison? What kind?" The old man slapped him and then looked at Xueqi with a smile. "Young man, what kind of frog poison do you want?" Xueqi thought for a moment and said, "Can I take a look at those frogs first?" He didn't know how different the frogs here were from the ones in the Yanjiao tribe. Of course. The old man didn't wait for Zhao to answer and quickly answered. Zhao whispered trouble and then jumped on the lotus leaf. His cheeks puffed up and he made a few goo-goob sounds before returning to the shore. After a while, Xueqi saw some frogs jump out from the forest and a few from the river. Most of these frogs were brightly colored, but there were also some that didn't look very conspicuous. Each frog was no bigger than a palm. After jumping over, they surrounded Zhao and didn't run away. They just stood there and occasionally moved their hind legs to wipe away the mucus on their bodies to keep their skin moist. "These are all dead. This frog's poison can relieve pain and it's very effective. I used it on the wild beasts on the mountain over there," Zhao said. "And then?" Xueqi asked. "They died." Xueqi. "If you use too much, even if it can be used as medicine, it's poison," Zhao said. "If you use poison well, it's medicine. If you don't use it well, it's poison." Xueqi naturally knew this. This one, and this one's poison is not bad. Just a little bit can kill the wild beasts in the forest. Zhao introduced a few of the frogs to Xueqi and then asked, "What kind of poison do you need? Poison blind? Poison mute? Numb all over? Rotten?" After asking a lot of questions, Zhao stopped and looked at Xueqi. He usually didn't like to participate in transactions, but since his grandfather had pulled him over, he naturally had to do his part. Otherwise, if he didn't get this deal done, his grandfather would nag him again when he went back. When Xueqi heard this series of questions, he was stunned. When he was in the Yanjiao tribe, he also used a lot of poisons, but he had never differentiated them so carefully. It seemed that the young man in front of him was very good at this. Seeing Xueqi staring at the frogs and not saying anything, the old man standing next to him became anxious. "If you don't know which one to choose, you can buy some of them and try it out." Then he turned to Zhao with a stern face. "Hurry up and make some poisonous stingers." Zhao scratched his head and helplessly said, "Okay." Then he walked towards the forest, and the old man eagerly pulled Xueqi to follow him. Although this kid in my family is a little lazy, but his understanding of poisonous frogs, this old man doesn't dare to say that he's the best, but he's definitely ranked in the front of the tribe. Xueqi followed them into the forest. These two people didn't have any malicious intentions, and they weren't like the Poo tribe traders who had a belly full of ulterior motives. Moreover, Xueqi also wanted to see how the Poo tribe people would extract poison from the frogs. Xiao Xian believed in Zhao's understanding of poisonous frogs. Around Zhao's eyes and eyelids were a dazzling bright yellow pattern, which was very similar to the poisonous frog that had just jumped out. What kind of pattern would be drawn according to one's preference? From this, it could be seen that Zhao was very fond of poisonous frogs, so naturally he understood them better. While walking in the woods, when passing by some plants with long thorns, you would break off some hard thorns from them. When he had a lot of hard thorns in his hand, you would stop. Then, he used the stone knife that the old man carried with him to chop a piece of wood. He split it in the middle and placed the wood on the ground. You croaked a few times. After waiting for the frogs to come over, he took out a hard thorn. You held it between his index and middle fingers and rubbed it on the body of the nearest frogs with blue patterns. Some transparent liquid was secreted from the frog's body. This was the frog's poison that could kill an entire deer. The long hard thorn was smeared with the poison, but it did not hurt the frog at all. After smearing it, Zhao turned his wrist, palm facing down, and slapped the wood he had just split open. When he retracted his hand, the poisoned hard thorn had been firmly nailed to the wood. The tip of the hard thorn was facing up, and the one that was nailed into the wood was the broken end. Just like when nailing a nail, the other end was nailed into the wood, not the tip of the nail but the other end. From this series of actions, it could be seen that Zhao was very proficient in this. He had done this many times before. One by one, the hard thorns smeared with poison were firmly nailed to the wood. There were 5 thorns for each type of frog poison. When one type of frog was finished, he would change to another frog and continue to apply the poison. Although this frog's poison may not be able to kill people, but this is its main effect. Zhao used the hard thorn to smear on a dark blue frog, and then smeared the poison on the hard thorn onto the leaves of a nearby plant. With a sizzling sound, a hole was quickly corroded where the poison was smeared on the leaf. There was still smoke coming out, and it smelled a little pungent. When the poison was smeared, there was no smell at all. It was hard to imagine that this kind of poison was taken from a frog that was not even the size of a palm. As for the hard thorns used by Zhao, because the surface of the thorns had a layer of corrosion-resistant hard skin, they would not be corroded by the poison. Zhao continued to nail the hard thorns smeared with poison onto the wood. When the poison on the thorns dried, he took them off the wood and wrapped them in something. When he needed to use them in the future, he could just take them out. The effect of the dried poison would not weaken much, but there was a time limit. The longer the poison was left, the weaker the poison would be. Xiao Xian watched as Zhao nailed the hard thorns into the wood with his bare hands. He knew that many frog poisons could only work through the blood. If they did not cut, the poison would not have much effect. Many of them would only cause a rash on the fingers, and would not be fatal. When the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe caught animals with poison, they would take certain protective measures. They would either wrap their hands with something or use other tools to catch them. But now, there were many frog poisons here that could work directly through the skin. There was no need to cut, but the person who made the hard thorns was very calm and used his fingers without any protection. If even a little bit of poison came into contact with the skin, it would corrode the skin and create a hole or be poisoned. Especially when the thorns smeared with poison were nailed into the wood. Many people were worried that the poison on the thorns would slide down to their fingers. But Zhao was always able to pull back the moment the poison dripped down, so the poison did not touch his fingers at all. What surprised Xiao Xian even more was that after there were no more thorns nailed into the wood, Zhao would directly hold the remaining thorns in his mouth. His teeth would bite the end of the thorns that was not stained with poison. As long as even a little bit of poison touched his lips, he would feel better. This was a very dangerous thing to do, but the old man next to him was not surprised. He had seen it many times and was not worried. After the thorns were smeared with poison, the poison on the thorns gradually dried. Zhao then pulled out the thorns with poison. Of course, this time he did not do it with his bare hands, but with the help of leaves. Passing the wrapped thorns to Xiao Xian, Zhao said, "Well, you can try these. If you think they are good, you can come again. Just find this old man. I'm going to sleep." Chapter 169. In the end, Yu was not able to sleep and was dragged back home by the old man. The drumming tribe would only leave tomorrow, so who knew if the drumming tribe would come to his house to trade for something. Yu was a person who had done a lot of research on frog poison, but he spent most of his time sleeping in the tribe. Sometimes, he would run to the river to find a suitable place to sleep on a lotus leaf. Other times, he would enter the forest to sleep on a tree branch. Now, there was only him and his grandfather in his family. But he wasn't interested in trading. He wanted to go out of the tribe to play, but the old man wouldn't let him. Xiao Xian did not have other things to do. He was not interested in pottery and coarse linen, so he simply went to talk to you about the frog poison. Since he was very knowledgeable about frog poison, he naturally knew how to use it. It would be great if the traps could be improved because of this. Since he was bored, you chatted with Xiao Xian. Like many Pooh tribe people, you also felt that the drumming tribe people were really stupid. Other than stone tools, they also liked to buy impractical things. If I had so many water moonstones, I would trade for a lot of food, or some suitable materials and tools. When I was hungry, I would eat, and when I was full, I would go out to play. You said. You also used frog poison to make traps and catch wild beasts. Some of the wood and stone he needed were not available around, so he could only trade with other tribes to see if he could get some. Listening to Yu's story, Xiao Xian only felt that the Yanjiao tribe's life was simply too different from these people's. The drumming tribe people did not have to worry too much about food. There were fish in the river, and some wild beasts in the nearby forest. If the wild beasts were not enough, they could use water moonstones to trade with other tribes. The only thing they had to worry about was the annual water moonstone harvest. Of course, there might not be a situation like this every year. As for the Pooh tribe people, most of them did not like to hunt. Compared to risking their lives to hunt, trading allowed them to get more resources. Not only food, but also other daily necessities. Since their ancestors had tasted the sweetness, their descendants would do similar things. Even now, in the hearts of the Pooh tribe, trading had become an essential part of their daily life. Except for the teams that had to travel far, most of the people in the Pooh tribe only needed to stay in the tribe and wait for the other tribes to come and trade. They didn't need to go to those dangerous, cold, dry and other places that they didn't like to fight with wild beasts or even fierce beasts. The surrounding tribes, including the drumming tribe, did not like to travel far, so they could only wait for the Pooh tribe's expedition team to come back and trade with them. There weren't as many ferocious beasts here, and the forest wasn't as dangerous as the ones in the Yanjiao tribe. From the drumming tribe to the Pooh tribe, it only took half a day. With the speed of the Yanjiao tribe's hunting team, it wouldn't even take half a day. This was the human world, the gathering place of humans. They didn't have so many threats from ferocious beasts. Instead, they only had disputes between human tribes. Every tribe had their own favorite way of life. Simply put, the people of the Pooh tribe had the talent of being merchants. Where do traveling teams usually go? The central region? Xiao Xian asked. Most of the time, they go to the central region. Why do you want to go? Yes, I originally came out to gain experience. Xiao Xian said. Yu was suddenly envious. He also wanted to go out. Many young people wanted to go out. The tribe's expedition team was made up of young adults. Every time he saw his peers go out with their parents, he also wanted to go. Unfortunately, his parents had already passed away. That year, the expedition team suffered heavy losses. More than 70% of the people didn't come back. Because of this, the old man didn't let you go. Actually, although the expedition team is dangerous, it isn't always so dangerous. You said. In the Pooh tribe, Chief Guangho was also very supportive of young people joining the expedition team. This was not a peaceful era. There were no laws and regulations. Killing people to steal treasures was not uncommon. In the expedition team, everyone had the ability to protect themselves. AI. It's a pity that the old man doesn't let us go. Yu was very annoyed. He studied the frog poison in addition to his interest. It was also to prepare for the expedition. Your tribe. When will the expedition team leave again? Xiao Xian asked. Just now, you had said that the tribe's traveling team would come back a few days after the 2 moons overlapped. Every time, they would come back on those days to exchange more things with the drumming tribe. After the exchange, they would take the water moonstones and other things and leave the tribe, setting off for a long journey. After chatting with you for a while, Xiao Xian went to find Fu Shi. Tonight, the drumming tribe would stay here for 1 night. They would leave tomorrow morning. Xiao Xian also went to inquire about the Pooh tribe's expedition team. In the expedition team, they could bring some people from other tribes, but they had to pay extra water moonstones. Xiao Xian didn't care about this, as long as he could follow. Right now, he didn't know much about the topography and tribal divisions. Following the Pooh tribe's expedition team was not a bad idea. He went to find the leader of the expedition team, paid 3 water moonstones, and took a token with a frog pattern. On the day of the expedition team's departure, Xueqi only needed to show this token and he could leave with the Pooh tribe's expedition team. Hearing that Xueqi wanted to join the expedition team, Fu sure didn't understand. They felt that waiting here was more cost-effective. When the Pooh tribe people brought the things over, they only needed to exchange water moonstones. Why should they follow? Giving away 3 water moonstones for nothing. But thinking about it, Xueqi came out to gain experience. Fu sure was relieved. He didn't continue to persuade him, but his heart still maintained his own thoughts. The next day, the drumming tribe people prepared to leave. Fu sure looked at his rattan basket full of things and was very happy. In addition to the necessary stones, stone tools and so on, there was also good-looking pottery and a piece of linen from the central region. When he went back, he would probably attract the envy of others. Thinking of this, Fu sure couldn't help but laugh a few times. He felt that this trip was really worth it. But in the short term, he wouldn't come here to trade. When it was almost winter, he would come back to trade for some food. We'll go back first. Xueqi, if you come back, remember to come to the drumming tribe to find us. Fu sure carried the rattan basket, standing on a crocodile, and said to Xueqi on the shore, "Okay, I'll definitely come back to find you." Watching the drumming tribe people leave, Xueqi planned to chat with the Pooh tribe people who were preparing for the expedition, hoping to get more information. Just as he was chatting with people, Xueqi saw Fu happily running by. "Fu, where are you going?" Xueqi asked. Seeing Xueqi, Fu's smile became bigger, and he came to share his joy. "My grandfather agreed. Haha, I just went to find leader Fan Ning. In a few days, I'll go with them." Speaking of this, Fu didn't have the sleepy look from yesterday. He was full of energy and couldn't wait to run a few laps around the tribe. Fan Ning was the leader of the Pooh tribe's expedition team. He was called leader by the people in the team, and Xueqi was looking for him. "Congratulations," Xueqi said. "Hee. I won't say any more. When we go back, we need to prepare more." Fu rubbed his hands and narrowed his eyes, just like those poisonous frogs brewing their venom. In the next few days, Xueqi also saw other tribes coming to the Pooh tribe to trade. The Luo tribe was good at fishing. They were close to the river and had a mountain to rely on, so they could catch fish and many beasts with their nets. They never lacked food. Every time the Luo tribe people came, they would have a big net of prey to trade with the Pooh tribe people. In addition to the Luo tribe, there were other small tribes. They were not as rich as the drumming tribe, and did not catch as much food as the Luo tribe. But each tribe had their own survival skills, such as making stone tools, finding stone materials and some rare materials. Some were also good at using medicine, directly using medicine or natural herbs to trade. In the few days that he stayed in the Pooh tribe, Xueqi had exchanged a lot of good things. Since he was preparing for the expedition, he naturally needed some good stone materials. He himself knew how to make stone tools, so he didn't need to use more water moonstones to exchange for polished stone tools. Stone tools, herbs, they all needed to be prepared. High-quality stones were not easy to find in this area, so Xueqi exchanged more. The Pooh tribe's expedition team set off 10 days later. On the day of departure, Xueqi's things were all prepared. The team had close to 200 people, and more than 90% of them were from the Pooh tribe. The expedition team gathered by the river. Fu had a big animal skin bag hanging around his neck and a big rattan basket on his back. He was panting as he ran over, followed by the old man. There were also other people around to see them off. The rattan basket was filled with many things, including stone knives, spearheads, and many dried meat and roasted insects. The old man gave some things to the people he knew in the team, and Xueqi's hand was also stuffed with a bottle of frog poison. It was Fu's first time joining the expedition team, and the old man hoped that everyone could help look after him. He was indeed a businessman. His brain was flexible, and he knew how to do things better than the people of the drumming tribe. Xueqi thought. Seeing Fu panting, Xueqi reached out and took the rattan basket from his back. "I'll hold this for you. I'll give it to you when we get on the raft." "Hey, no need, you also brought a lot of things. My basket is very heavy, you can't carry it." Fu hadn't finished speaking when he saw Xueqi easily lift the rattan basket with one hand. Fu and some people around looked at Xueqi, who was still relaxed, and asked, "Which tribe are you from?" They had never seen anyone stronger than the people of the drumming tribe. "Yan Jiao," Xiao Xian said. "Oh." Fu and the others silently memorized this tribe's name. Xiao Xian smiled, then took the things and jumped onto the raft with the others. The shaman gave Xiao Xian some tasks. Because of natural and man-made disasters, the Yanjiao tribes were divided, and the one on the other side of the river was only one of the divisions. What Xiao Xian needed to do was to find another Yanjiao tribe. Only until now, he hadn't heard anything about Yanjiao. The shaman gave the stone card to Xiao Xian, and also drew a totem pattern on Cha-Cha's feet. He didn't want Xiao Xian to hide anything. If the world had already forgotten about the Yanjiao tribe, then everyone would remember this name. Besides, even if he tried to hide it, once the battle started and the totem pattern was revealed, everything would be known. There was no need to lie. Chapter 170. The traveling team left from another river in the Pu tribe, and they also used the waterway. This river did not have many lotus leaves, and on the rafts stood people. Xiao Xian and Yu were on the same raft, listening to the other people telling you about their travels. In the sky above the rafts, Cha-Cha followed. Xiao Xian had already told Fan Ning about this. At that time, Fan Ning wanted Xiao Xian to pay an extra water moonstone, but was rejected by Xiao Xian. Cha-Cha could warn in the sky, and could reduce the chances of the Pu tribe encountering danger. With such benefits you still want to charge? Now the business here was not developed, but these people already had the potential to be profiteers. In the end, although Fan Ning's face was not very good, he did not insist. Since it was a long journey, naturally it would not be a matter of 1 or 2 days, sometimes it would take up to 100 days. Probably because there were more human tribes in this area, it was not as dangerous as the hunting area on the other side of the river. Sometimes they would encounter some trouble from underwater, or harassment from other tribes, but overall, it was still peaceful and safe. Because of their frequent travels, the people of the Pu tribe were very clear about which waterway was safer and which direction was less troublesome. Xiao Xian also memorized these routes in his heart, and when he was free, he would draw these on animal skin to complete the map. If one day the Yanjiao tribe on the other side of the river came back, they would need these maps. Nearly 1,000 years had passed, and the changes were very big. This place was completely different from what the ancestors had recorded. As they moved forward, the river became wider and wider. Near the river, there would always be some traces of human activity. Listening to the people beside them, there was a small tribe not far ahead, but that small tribe did not like to interact with people from other tribes. They were also reclusive, and when they saw people from other tribes, they would avoid them, or throw stones and wooden arrows. The Pu tribe was very unhappy with this, but they would not delay the travel speed because of this. "Be careful," the person beside them who had many years of travel experience reminded them. On the shore in front, there were a few women wearing animal skin washing things. When they saw the raft team, they quickly dragged their things and ran. When the wooden raft team passed by, some arrows were shot from the forest on the slightly higher ground on the shore. This kind of strength was nothing to Xiao Xian, or even to the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe. They could easily catch it and break it. However, if there were a lot of such arrows, it would be annoying. The people of the Pu tribe used their wooden shields to block the incoming arrows. Xiao Xian used his blade to cut down the arrows. If it was a big tribe, maybe the Pu tribe would take a step back and communicate with them. But for such a small tribe, the people of the Pu tribe were too lazy to pay attention to those eccentric people. The speed of the rafts increased, and only after the rafts left that area did the arrows stop. In fact, the people hiding in the bushes might not have really wanted to kill the people passing by. They were just trying to scare them. If they really wanted to kill them, they would have used a more forceful method instead of using these wooden arrows that didn't even have a sharpened head. There were many tribes around, and the presence of the small tribes was very low. Most of the tribes only had a few hundred people, and their strength was not strong. They were born and died quickly, so the Pu tribe did not pay too much attention to them. The people of the Pu tribe around Xiao Xian did not want to talk too much. They only cared about their own interests. 2 days later. "In front of us is the fork. We will stay there for 2 days. The person next to him looked at the dark sky and said. In front of them, the river was divided into 2, forming a Y shape. There were many people from other tribes who were traveling to the central region. The Pu tribe knew many of them, and sometimes they would travel together to make the traveling team bigger. This way they would have more security. There were too many strong people in the central region. They could only use numbers to fight. Xian looked over. On both sides of the river, there were no mountains, no dense forests, and became flat. Here there were many houses. There were wooden houses, and also stone houses. The architectural style was also diverse. There were oval, triangular, flat-roofed wooden huts, pointed-roofed thatched roofs. Just by looking at this, one could see that this was not a tribe. Looking at the people, although the characteristics were not as obvious as the houses, people who saw them would have the same thought. These people were too mixed up, like a plate of loose sand. Every grain of sand came from different river basins, and then gathered here. Although there were many people, but many of them looked very weak. Some were as thin as a match, some had lifeless eyes. Regardless of whether they were adults or children, they were all the same. The children were slightly better. In addition to their physical condition, some would even smile. But the adults, more often than not, were at a loss and depressed. In the end, what happened to these people that made them like this? These people are? Xian asked the people next to him who were very experienced. You mean them? The people of the Pu tribe glanced over, some sighed. Some did not care. They are wanderers. The wanderers they spoke of were not tourists, but those who were homeless and had no place to live. They were like rootless duckweed, often moving around, doing all kinds of things to survive. They are people who lost their fire seed. A person of the Pu tribe next to them said. People who lost their fire seed, no matter where they went, their life would be in darkness. Without their fire seed, where would their power come from? Lost their fire seed? Xian was very curious about this statement. Yes, their tribe no longer exists. Their fire seed was extinguished, and they lost their source of power. The person said. In the year Xian awakened, the shaman told them that their source of power was in their body. Under the call of the fire seed, it would gradually begin to awaken, which was the totem in their mind. If the fire seed was extinguished, it meant that the tribe no longer existed. The totem would naturally dissipate, and the source of power in the body would naturally fall into a deep sleep, or even disappear. No wonder those people were in such a state. The tribe was gone, the totem power was gone, and they became wanderers, wandering in the world, at a loss. The only thing they could do was to survive, completely dominated by survival instinct. However, the fire seed being extinguished, this statement made Xian very surprised. He originally thought that the special flame would exist for a long time, but now it seemed that it could be extinguished. But when it was extinguished, the tribe would be gone. According to the people of the Pu tribe, after the fire seed was extinguished, the tribe would disappear. Some people would use their own special survival skills in exchange for food. For example, coolies. Perhaps, for the rest of their lives, they would be in such a state of wandering. Some people would abandon their beliefs and join other tribes. Their descendants would naturally awaken the totem of other tribes under the call of the fire seed of other tribes. But if the totem power in the body was too mixed, it would be good if the awakening was successful. Even if they would be discriminated against, at least they would have a safe place to stay, and a place to belong. But if the awakening failed, they would be driven out of the tribe, and continue the wanderer life of their ancestors. Why don't they go hunting? Xian asked. But after asking, Xian realized that there might be various situations. Without the totem power, hunting was too risky. Hunting? You smiled. Unless they have to, they won't go hunting by themselves. Even if this place was not like the forest on the other side of the river, but in many places, it was impossible for one or two people to resist. At least a team was needed to barely survive, especially those who had been abandoned by the fire seed. Without faith and power, 9 out of 10 people would die. If both parents are not wanderers, what will happen to the offspring? Xian asked. Generally speaking, many tribes do not require marriage with people within the tribe, for example, our Pu tribe. As long as the descendant accepted the guidance of the fire seed, it would be fine. However, there was only one choice: either accept the tribe's fire seed or accept the other. He could only awaken one source of power. Otherwise, if he awakened both sources of power, it would cause conflict. The people of small tribes are more inclined to marry people within the tribe, but this also has its disadvantages. If there are too few people, it is easy to cause chaos. The Pu tribe's experienced traveler also said that in order to increase the population of small tribes, many unimaginable promiscuity occurred, making the whole tribe a mess. The The people of the Pu tribe were quite disdainful of this. Xiao Xian thought about it. When the Yanjiao tribe was stranded in that place, there were not many people, but there were records in the hands of the shamans. According to Xiao Xian's records, the tribe's population growth was very slow, but very stable. There was no chaos like what you said. When he was in the tribe, Xiao Xian felt that the Yanjiao tribe shamans did not have an easy life. Now that he heard about the situation of other tribes, if it were not for the leadership of the Yanjiao tribe, generation after generation of shamans, it might have become like that. In that situation, they had to face all kinds of fierce beasts in the surrounding forest. It was not easy to develop to the scale of nearly 2,000 people today. A good shaman, a good leader, was indeed very important. The Pu tribe's traveler team came ashore one after another. Xiao Xian saw a small team of 10 people quickly come over to help the Pu tribe's rafts carry things and look after the rafts on the water. There was also a person holding a whip and staring fiercely at them. Who are they? Xiao Xian asked the person next to him. You mean them? It was the same words as before, but this time the Pu tribe's people's eyes were no longer indifferent or sighing, but with extreme contempt, heavily said, Those are slaves. Xiao Xian's eyelids jumped. At this time, Xiao Xian only heard a presumptuous laughter in front of him. The laughter was a bit harsh. Looking up, Xiao Xian saw a man casually draped in a leopard pelt, smiling as he slowly walked over. He was tall and thin, with a pale face, unlike the tanned skin of the people around him who were busy working. His eyes were slightly squinted, and he seemed to be laughing happily. But from his eyes flashed a sharp light that told Xiao Xian that this person was not easy to get along with. Ha 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 ha, we meet again. When that person came over, the leader of the traveler team, Fan Ning, quickly went to greet him. Fan Ning, who had always been unhappy with Xiao Xian, was now smiling like a flower, and went to talk to the other party. Who is that person? Xiao Xian asked the person next to him. This time the Pu tribe's people's voice was not so loud. Slightly lowering their voice, they said, He is the master of those slaves. In other words, the person wearing leopard skin was a slave master. Chapter 171. Although Xiao Xian was very curious about the slaves and the slave master, Xiao Xian still had to follow the travel team to settle down first. The slave master had a lot of houses here. At such an intersection, there were a lot of teams coming and going. Every day, there were many people like the Pu tribe's travel team who came here to settle down. He would collect a certain fee. All the work was done by the slaves. But Xiao Xian found that the slaves who were despised by the Pu tribe, although their health was also very poor, compared to the wanderers, they had something more. Right, strength, it was strength. The slaves had more strength than the wanderers. It was not necessarily strength, it could be something else, speed or reaction or something else. Some of the slaves were in pain. Some were numb. They turned a blind eye to the disdain around them. Becoming a slave meant abandoning all the beliefs of the past. From now on, he only believed in one thing: his master. The night was getting darker. Fan Ning did not tell the slave master that he still needed to arrange the team. The temporary place to settle down was not very good. The space was small, and everyone was squeezed inside. This was better than feeding the mosquitoes by the river. Moreover, at night, it was not safe outside. They might be killed by the wanderers if they went out. It was said that some crazy wanderers would even eat people when they were hungry. Although they were not afraid of them, it was always good to be on guard. It was better to stick together. As for Cha-Cha, Xiao Xian did not need to worry. This guy could survive in the hunting grounds. Here, those beasts were no threat to him. Even if he encountered danger, he would find Xiao Xian. At this time in the surrounding area, in the different houses that Xiao Xian had seen before, there were also fires lit. The people who went out to work came back with the fruits of the day's work. Some came back from the forest, some came back from the river where the travel team stopped. They also did hard work, but the pay was very little. A thin figure walked quickly through the night. The wooden stick in his hand waved quickly, driving away the buzzing mosquitoes. Coming to a small wooden house, he moved a thick wooden board, flashed in, and then quickly moved the board back to block the mosquitoes outside. He's back. Inside the house, a similarly thin woman was sitting there with a small child in her arms. She looked exhausted. The child in the woman's arms was sleeping. In the corner, there was a wooden plank. It was a bed, and a thin figure was sleeping on it. Yes, The man who had just returned from outside put aside the animal skin with several holes on it and took out the day's harvest. They were some fruits from the mountains, a fish, and a rabbit. The surrounding wild beasts that could be hunted had mostly been hunted. If they went any further, their abilities were limited. If they went any further, they would die. As for the fruits, many of them had already been picked before they ripened. Today his luck was still good. He found a few big fruits in a corner that was not easy to be noticed by others. Seeing the fish and rabbit, the woman's eyes lit up. This was already considered good. The woman carefully put the child in her arms on the wooden bed, and went to put the fish and rabbit into the pot to cook. Because these two animals had been slaughtered and cleaned outside, they did not need to be treated much. They could be cooked directly. She came back and bit the fruits one by one. After a while, the woman put the juicy fruit next to the mouth of the 1-year-old child on the wooden bed. With food, the child did not sleep anymore. She hugged the fruit and ate quietly. The woman handed 2 fruits to her daughter on the wooden bed. "Eat some first." "How is it today?" the woman asked. The man sighed and shook his head. At that time, there were 10 people who came here with their family. 3 of them joined other tribes, 1 successfully stayed, and the other 2 were driven away and did not survive. 4 of them were left behind by wild beasts when they formed a group to hunt in the mountains. 2 of them became slaves. The remaining person, along with his family, had been staying here for almost 10 years. "If it doesn't work, I plan to find someone to leave with us. Let's go to another place. I've already talked to them today," the man said. As he was speaking, the wooden plank blocking the door was slapped. "Yan Shuo, open the door." Hearing this voice, the man's tight muscles relaxed. He put down the stone knife in his hand, stood up and moved the wooden plank away. The person who came in was shorter than Yan Shuo. He was even skinnier than Yan Shuo, like a bag of bones. His eyes were bloodshot, and his breathing was rapid, as if he was making some kind of decision. "What's wrong?" Yan Shuo asked. The other person came in and suddenly raised his head. Because he was too emotional, the expression on his face was somewhat distorted. "Yan Shuo, I plan to go there." Saying this, the person looked in a direction. Yan Shuo's eyes widened in surprise. "I really can't take it anymore. Today I met them, and they have strength again," that person said, and showed Yan Shuo his broken arm. This arm, according to the current situation, would not be able to recover in a short period of time. Yan Shuo knew who they was referring to. It was the people who came here with him and became slaves. And the direction that the person in front of him was looking at was the place where the slaves were. Yan Shuo opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. Originally, he thought that everyone would leave together, find a better place, and work hard to survive. But he did not expect that the other party had already given up, and could not endure anymore. The feeling of having no strength really made people despair. "Okay, I'm leaving." That person walked to the door and stopped. With his back facing Yan Shuo, he slightly tilted his head. "Make your decision soon. Also, don't think about those impossible things anymore." After that person left, Yan Shuo sat there quietly, looking at the fire in the bonfire, and did not speak. When his eyes stared at the bonfire, the muscles on Yan Shuo's face twitched twice, and the veins on his not-so-thick arm could be clearly seen. The strangest thing was that the lines that appeared on Yan Shuo's face were not clear. If Xiao Xian was here, he would definitely recognize that these were the totem lines on the faces of the Yanjiao tribe's totem warriors. Only, compared to the totem warriors of the Yanjiao tribe, the totem lines on Yan Shuo's face were not clear, and not stable. Sometimes they were slightly clear, and sometimes they were completely hidden. And on his naked upper body and arms, there were no lines. Yan Shuo had always felt that his strength should be far more than this. But because he was a wanderer, he did not have a fire seed, so he could not become a true totem warrior. He knew that his ancestors were from the Yanjiao tribe. In the words that were passed down from generation to generation, everyone remembered the Yanjiao tribe and the tribe's totem. Father said that the Yanjiao tribe still exists. Yan Shuo said in a low voice. The people of the Yanjiao tribe are all strong warriors. They can easily carry a bear. The fire seed's flames can cover their whole body. The flames of the Yanjiao tribe's fire seed can cover an entire mountain. At first, Yan Shuo was just muttering to himself in a low voice. His tone was still calm, as if he was telling a story. But gradually, his tone became depressed, and his eyes became red. Because of their obsession, the ancestors of the Yan Shuo tribe would always give their juniors names with the word Yan or Jiao. This was so that they would remember the name of their tribe. If they could find their tribe one day, their wish would be fulfilled. Therefore, the later generations were not allowed to join any other tribe. They were not allowed to be slaves. Even if they died, they were not allowed to betray their own tribe. But so many years had passed, and the Yanjiao tribe was no longer remembered by people. No one in the surroundings had heard of such a tribe. No matter how many times Yan Shuo said that his tribe still existed, and that his fire seed still existed, the others did not believe him. But Yan Shuo's strength was indeed greater than others, and he would also reveal faint totem lines. This was an important reason why he was able to persevere until now. But now, he was at a loss. The other 10 people who came with him were all unable to persevere. Now, only his family was left. Leave. If there were not enough people, if only his family left, they would probably die before they could go far. 2 days ago, someone left, but the next day, he was found dead by the river not far away. The blood on his body was sucked dry by the mosquitoes. Half of his body was bitten by the wild beasts that came out at night in the nearby forest. If another day passed, not even his bones would be left. Even if Yan Shuo's strength was greater than others, it was only relative to the wanderers. For those totem warriors, it was not enough. Power. With power, one could live better in such a world. This was also the reason why many wanderers who could not endure it chose to become slaves. Although they lost their freedom and lost a lot, they could still gain power from their slave masters. But how should they choose? Should they continue to endure and search, or wait for news from the Yanjiao tribe? Or, like those wanderers who could not endure it, find a tribe to rely on, or become a slave? No. Yan Shuo held his head with both hands. He could not give up, he could not. Father said, the tribe still exists, still exists. The woman sitting on the wooden plank looked at her husband like this. She wanted to say something but hesitated. She wanted to comfort him, but she also felt that she should be like the others and choose another path. But just as the woman was about to speak, she realized that on her husband's body, there were some lines that extended down his face and neck. And on his arms, there were some flame-like patterns that started from his shoulders, extended to his entire upper arm, and then past his elbow. That. The woman was too shocked, she could not speak. Yan Shuo, who was holding his head and thinking, raised his head. His eyes were still filled with red veins. Seeing his wife's appearance, he was a little confused. But when he looked at the direction his wife was pointing at, he also saw those totem patterns that had already spread out. Since he was born, other than the faint totem patterns that appeared on his face when he was 10 years old, there were no other patterns. But now, these totem patterns that appeared, those patterns were like firewood that had been prepared long ago but had not been lit. Now they were lit one by one. Although they were not clear, they could still roughly see the patterns. Yan Shuo thought of his father's words. You have to believe that in our blood, the power is still there. It is just sleeping. Until one day when the time is right, it will start to gradually awaken. At the same time, Xiao, who was squeezed into a small room with the others and resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yan Shuo's direction. Chapter 172. Xiao felt the totem in his mind jumping. The sudden change woke him up from his light sleep. Surrounded by wooden walls, he couldn't see the situation outside. In the room, there was a layer of hay on the ground, and many people were lying on their stomachs, snoring louder and louder. Xiao quietly sensed. It was in that direction. But, what happened to make the totem change like this? He wanted to go out and take a look, but soon, the change stopped. The totem flame in his mind returned to its usual state, no longer surging. Xiao temporarily dispelled the idea of going out immediately. Here, he was surrounded by people he didn't know, and this was the slave owner's territory. If he went out at night, he would probably be regarded as a person with bad intentions and be attacked by the patrolman. After sensing again and confirming that the totem didn't move, Xiao closed his eyes and continued to rest. The next day, the people of the Pu tribe didn't have any arrangements. Only Fan Ning and a few other important members of the travel team went to discuss with the other travel teams. It had nothing to do with the rest of the team. Xiao originally planned to go to that direction to investigate, to see if he could find the reason for the totem's change last night, but as soon as he left the house, he was pulled away by you. You found a new kind of frog poison in the other travel teams. It was a frog species that didn't exist in their tribe. He wanted to go by himself, but remembered what his grandfather said before he left, so he pulled a few more people, including Xueqi. Xueqi, what are you looking at? One of them asked. Are they all wanderers over there? Xueqi pointed in that direction. The people of the Pu tribe who had several years of travel experience looked over there and said, more or less, but I advise you not to go. The people over there are crazy. If you go, you may be entangled. There are many who want to join other tribes, but they are too dangerous, so very few tribes are willing to accept them. Despair made people crazy. After suppressing it for too long, intense emotions were naturally there. This made many people avoid them. You want to go over there? You asked. I just want to take a look, Xueqi replied. You don't have to go there now, a middle-aged man next to him said. The wanderers there will go out early. Some will go to the surrounding mountains to look for food, and some will go nearby to see if they can find other opportunities. Xueqi looked in that direction. Indeed, there weren't many people walking around outside, so he left with Zhao and the others. He would come back later to take a look. Not long after Xueqi and the others left, Yan Shua moved away the wooden planks in front of the house where the wanderers gathered. There was exhaustion on his face, but he was in a good mood. Compared to his eyes that were like stagnant water in the past, there was a glimmer of light in his eyes now. Last night, for the first time, he saw the totem patterns of the legendary totem warriors on his body. Moreover, they were from the Yanjiao tribe. Although the totem patterns were not clear and did not last for long, Yan Shua felt that there was light in his life again. He was so excited that he could not sleep for the whole night. People who had been in the dark for a long time only needed a little bit of light to ignite their hope. Last night, besides the changes in the totem patterns, Yan Shua also felt a slight change in his body. It looked the same as before, but Yan Shua felt that his strength seemed to have increased a little. When he moved the wooden planks, he obviously felt a lot easier. Originally, he planned to leave here with the others, but after knowing that things had changed last night, Yan Shua temporarily put down the idea of leaving. After he got up in the morning, he discussed with his wife for a while before coming out of the house. It was much later than usual. There were already people around looking for food. Yan Shua also planned to leave, but unexpectedly, just as he was about to leave, he saw someone coming from the riverbank. Seeing the other party, Yan Shua frowned. He turned around and said to his wife in the house, "Stay in the house, don't come out." The person who came over walked leisurely with a vine whip in his hand. On the riverbank, where the slaves carried goods, people like this could often be seen. They were also slaves, but compared to the lowest-class slaves, they were slightly better. They were responsible for supervising the lowest-class slaves, and if anyone was lazy, they would be mercilessly whipped. Probably because they enjoyed this kind of power, they usually whipped anyone who was not pleasing to the eye. Sometimes, they would even beat someone to death. But as long as the slave owner did not pursue the matter, it would be fine. And the person who came over was called Li. He was a wanderer who came here from other places with Yan Shua. Later they could not endure it and joined other tribes, but were rejected again and became slaves. And Li was the first to choose to become a slave among the people who came with them. At the beginning, Li was also just a slave of the lowest class. He had to do a lot of work every day, and had very little time to rest. Sometimes, he would be so tired that he almost fell down and was even whipped. However, he ran into a good opportunity. Someone had offended the leader of a relatively large traveling group, and the slave master had directly slaughtered a few people as an apology to that traveling group. It was at that time that Ruthless was promoted to the position of slave master. After becoming a slave, they could obtain new strength from the slave owner. And as they were promoted, they could obtain more resources and strength from the slave owner, and naturally their strength would also increase. The person who came to find Yan Shua last night had his arm broken and his body full of injuries caused by Li. Maybe it was to show off his power, or maybe it was because of some personal grudges. He was ruthless towards his former companions. If it was not because there was something at the riverbank and Li had to go over immediately to deal with it, that person would have died long ago. Among the people who came, some left, some died, and some were injured. Other than Yan Shua's family, the last person could not withstand the pressure last night and chose to become a slave. Now, only Yan Shua was left. Li held a long vine whip and walked towards Yan Shua step by step, with a sinister smile on his face. If he was also a slave of the slave owner, he might not dare to kill him directly. Although sometimes the slave owner would not care about the life or death of the lowest level slave, he was afraid that the slave owner would have other ideas. It wasn't easy for him to be promoted, so Li naturally didn't want to anger his slave master. Don't look at how that slave master was all smiles all day long. When he made a move, he was extremely cruel. Thinking back to the time when the slave master decisively killed someone with a raise of his hand, a chill ran down Li's spine. However, the slave owner would not care about wanderers. These wanderers did not know what was good for them, and even rejected the people that the slave owner fancied. At that time, the slave owner fancied Yan Shuo, who was the strongest among them. Unfortunately, Yan Shuo did not know what was good for him and rejected him. And Li seized the opportunity and chose to follow the slave owner and leave Yan Shuo and the others. Wasn't it just a little stronger? They were all wanderers, but they did not have a tribe, and their fire seed had long been extinguished. What was the difference between them? As for the Yanjiao tribe that Yan Shuo kept telling them on the way here, Li did not believe a single word. If the tribe was still there, why would they fall into such a situation? If the tribe was still there, why did Yan Shuo not look for it? If the Yanjiao tribe really existed, why did no one in the traveling team know about it? At that time, Yan Shuo seemed to be the calmest among them. But in fact, in the hearts of others, Yan Shuo was a lunatic, always fantasizing about those impossible things. What Li hated the most was the hopeful look in Yan Shuo's eyes when he mentioned the Yanjiao tribe. In the past, he could not beat Yan Shuo, but after becoming a slave, he once again had power. It was just that he did not have the time to find these former companions to communicate. But now, he had a lot of free time every day. Yesterday, he found one of them, and today, he deliberately came to find Yan Shuo. In order to avoid the situation of being called away at the last minute yesterday, he also let people who were promoted by the slave owner like him to help watch the slaves by the riverbank. Li held a whip in one hand, and played with a palm-sized shell in the other. He heard that in the central region, there were places that liked to use beautiful shells to exchange for things. Unfortunately, the shells in this place were far from that level. They were ugly and weak, just like the people here. Crack! The shell in his hand was instantly crushed into pieces by Li. I heard that you guys are not living well now? Li looked at the alert Yan Shuo, and then looked at the messy wooden shack behind Yan Shuo that looked like it could be blown down by a gust of wind. He smiled sinisterly, and in the next moment, he raised his hand and viciously lashed out with a whip. The vine whip hit the wooden shack. The wooden shack, which was not sturdy to begin with, immediately fell down with a crackling sound, and a corner of the roof collapsed. Li! Seeing that Li intended to continue destroying his house, Yan Shuo could not bear it anymore. After all, his wife and children were inside. If the house was destroyed, where would they sleep tonight? There were too many dangerous factors around, and the two children were still young. It was easy for accidents to happen. Li came with a murderous intent. Yan Shuo knew clearly what his purpose was, and did not expect to have a peaceful conversation. Yan Shuo held the chipped stone knife that he usually used, and rushed towards Li. Li looked at Yan Shuo, doubt flashing in his eyes. Yan Shuo seemed to be different from before? It should not be like this. What happened to Yan Shuo? However, Li was not worried. No matter what happened, Yan Shuo, a wanderer, was still not his opponent. Yan Shuo, who instantly rushed forward, waved his knife based on his experience of hunting wild beasts. An unsuppressible fighting spirit suddenly rose in his heart. It was different from before. Although Yan Shuo's strength was greater than others, his body seemed to be blocked by a large gate, and he could not create much waves. But now, although there was the same feeling of obstruction as before, Yan Shuo felt that the resistance was much smaller. When he waved his knife, there was a kind of indescribable carefree feeling. Was this power? The shadow of the knife carried the power of destruction. Every knife seemed to want to harvest its prey, and slashed towards Li. And on Yan Shuo's face, totem patterns that were clearer than before appeared. Almost at the same time, Xiao, who was pulled by Li and the others to look at the poisonous frog, moved his gaze away from the poisonous frog, and looked towards the wanderer's residence. Li, I have something to do and will leave first. Help me get some poison. Xiao handed Li a water moonstone, and quickly left. Hey, then we will go back to the house first. Li looked at Xiao, who left in a hurry, and did not think much of it. He once again looked at the poisonous frog in front of him. Chapter 173. Li originally thought that he only needed one hand to cripple him, but he didn't expect that Yan Shuo would suddenly explode with power that was different from before. Even the speed at which he swung his sword was much faster. This made Li have no choice but to take out the stone sword at his waist to block. Bang 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 bang. The crisp sound of the stone swords colliding spread throughout the area where the wanderers lived. But no one came over. They all stood far away and watched. Wanderers had no power and no tribe to support them. It wasn't strange for them to be killed. Even if they got along well with Yan Shuo's family and received help from him, they were unwilling to provoke the slaves of the slave masters. However, what surprised everyone was that the totem tattoo on Yan Shuo's face wasn't there just now. It appeared during the battle and wasn't drawn on purpose. It was different from those scammers who pretended to be totem warriors. Although it was much fainter compared to totem warriors, it still surprised the surrounding people. The explosive power collided with the stone swords. Debris flew from the swords, hitting Li's face until he felt a stinging pain. Looking at Yan Shuo again, his face was also scratched by the debris, but he didn't seem to feel it. Instead, he became braver and fiercer. Feeling the numbness on his wrist, the killing intent in Li's eyes became stronger and stronger. Fortunately, he came today. He didn't know what method Yan Shuo used to increase his power. If he waited a little longer, he might become even stronger. At that time, it would be difficult to kill him. Fortunately, although the current Yan Shuo's power had increased, it was still not enough. Bang! The stone swords used by the two were not of the best quality. In addition to Yan Shuo's explosive power just now, he attacked fiercely again and again. In the end, the two swords broke. The stone sword in Li's hand was the first to break. The stone sword in Yan Shuo's hand also had obvious cracks. With one more strike, the stone sword would break. They couldn't be used anymore. After a short confrontation, the two separated. The surrounding wanderers who were watching were very surprised. After all, wanderers didn't have much power, and Li was promoted by the slave masters. But that Yan Shuo, who was usually inconspicuous, was actually so strong. No, usually when they entered the mountain with Yan Shuo, they didn't feel that Yan Shuo was so strong. But today was different. That short burst just now was also strange. A totem tattoo actually appeared on Yan Shuo's face. After Yan Shuo stopped, he only felt a burst of pain in his arms. He had never exploded like this before, even when he was in the most dangerous situation. There seemed to be some kind of power in his body. Just now, he had unconsciously concentrated that power at one point and exploded it. That was why his attacks had been strengthened. Looking at the broken blade on the ground, Yan Shuo was somewhat excited. If he was given more time, he believed that he would become even stronger. Even Ruthless would not be his opponent. Li's eyes were hazy as he looked at Yan Shuo, who had his hands on his knees and was panting heavily. His heart was even more determined to kill Yan Shuo today. Li threw the broken blade in his hand towards Yan Shuo, but Yan Shuo dodged to the side. Crack! Half of the wooden wall of the wooden hut that was hit by the broken saber had collapsed. Inside the house, Yan Shuo's wife was holding their children. None of the three screamed. Yan Shuo's wife had a worried look on her face. The 1-year-old child in her arms stared at his father outside, as if he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to be afraid, and his eyes were wide open. As for Yan Shuo's daughter, she stared hatefully at Li outside. She remembered that her father had helped that person before, but that person always caused trouble for her father. Now, he even wanted to kill her father. Meeting the gazes of the three people in the house, the sinister smile in Li's eyes deepened. He wouldn't leave a single person in the house alive. Yo, what's the matter? A light voice floated over. Yan Shuo looked over and clenched his fists. Facing Li, he was still confident, but this person, he had no confidence. And the originally savage Li, after hearing this voice, immediately put on a flattering smile. Why have you come? The person who came was wearing a beast skin coat that looked like snake skin. The coat was slightly long, and there was a tail-like belt at the back. On his body, there was a snake that was as thick as an adult's thigh. That pair of snake eyes that seemed to have no temperature stared at the surrounding people. Everyone who was stared at by it felt their scalp tighten. This kind of person was also a slave, but his position was one level higher than Li's. Many times, the slave masters didn't care about things and let them do it. And people like Li were all subordinate to these people. Really a piece of trash. You can't even deal with a wanderer. What's the use of having you? That person said slowly. Li's forehead was sweating, and he nervously ran over. He squeezed out a smile and found an excuse for his mistake. This boss, I don't know what happened to Yan Shua. He actually has a totem tattoo and his strength has increased a lot. The person who was carelessly teasing the big snake on his body raised his small eyes and glanced at Yan Shua. He sneered, as if he was looking at something ugly, and said with disdain, "Totem tattoo? Is a totem tattoo like that?" As he spoke, that person raised his hand, and the snake slid down from his body. And on that person's body, from his neck to his arms, legs and other places, there were some clear patterns that appeared one after another. Those patterns were like rings that were linked together to form a chain. More and more wanderers were paying attention to this side, and that person felt proud. He was also a wanderer in the past, but he followed the slave masters earlier, and was promoted, and had more strength. Only at their level did they truly have the mark of a slave master. Not every slave was qualified to have a mark. Only those who were entrusted with important tasks by the slave masters were qualified to have it. People like Li were not qualified. For wanderers who did not have a totem tattoo, a totem tattoo was an extravagant hope. Even if it was not a totem tattoo, other tattoos would do, as they represented strength. Some wanderers saw the slave mark on that person's body, and their eyes flashed with struggle. No matter what those marks were, it was a symbol of strength, and what they hoped to have the most was strength. Maybe becoming a slave was not a bad idea. It was just a little hard work. Maybe one day, he could also climb to the level of having a mark? No matter what others thought, Yan Shua stared at the person in front of him vigilantly. This person was very strong, and he could not defeat him at all. And the other party did not hide his killing intent, which made Yan Shua understand that this conflict was unavoidable. He would die. Not only him, but also his wife and children in the house behind him. Run. He could not run away. Being targeted by these slaves, it was impossible to run away. Yan Shua was not resigned. If there was a tribe, who would dare to bully them? How did the slave masters treat the traveling teams of the tribes? How did they treat wanderers like them? He was not resigned. He finally had a glimmer of hope, but now he was going to lose his life again. Yan Shua put one hand behind his back, and made a gesture to his wife in the house. This was the way they were familiar with. He would try his best to delay the person in front of him, and let his wife and children escape. Yan Shua, whose back was facing the house, did not know that the woman in the house was already crying. She hugged her children tightly, and held a stone thorn in her hand. She did not plan to run away. Since she could not run away, she might as well die together. Even if she could run away, she could not bring her children to live. She did not have the ability. That person walked towards Yan Shua step by step. He was not worried that Yan Shua would escape, because he could not escape. At the same time, he also wanted to let the wanderers see the difference between them. He really enjoyed the feeling of being watched by the crowd. Looking at the dim tattoo on Yan Shua's face that he had never seen before, that person said in a teaching tone, "A real totem tattoo does not look like this." After speaking, that person's speed suddenly increased. His 5 fingers formed a claw, and grabbed towards Yan Shua's neck. Yan Shua only felt that the person was just a few dozen steps away, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of him. At this moment, Yan Shua suddenly felt a suffocating feeling, as if his throat was already tightly gripped by that hand. However, when that hand was less than half a palm's distance from Yan Shua, it stopped. It was forcefully stopped by someone. The person who grabbed Yan Shua only felt a shadow flash in front of him. The hand that was about to grab Yan Shua's throat was suddenly restrained by someone who suddenly appeared. Looking up, that person's pupils shrank rapidly, as if he had seen something inconceivable. His eyes widened, as if his eyeballs were about to pop out. Li and the other wanderers who were looking at this side also stared blankly. Their line of sight moved from the face of the person who suddenly appeared to Yan Shua's face, and then looked at the former, and then back at Yan Shua. They kept looking back and forth, and finally came to a conclusion. The totem tattoo on their faces was the same. 1, 2, 1. Then tell me, what does a real totem tattoo look like? Xiao Xian grabbed that person's arm, and asked in a calm voice. His tone was obviously very calm, but it made those who heard it feel as if a bucket of ice was poured over their heads. This was a real totem tattoo, one that was exactly the same as Yan Shua's totem tattoo. It was not the dim tattoo like Yan Shua's, but a very clear one, as if it was alive. Tribe. This was what everyone who saw this thought in their hearts. Xiao Xian did not care about the others. He raised his hand, and threw the person he was grabbing away. After the other person stood firm, he walked towards that person step by step, just like how that person had treated Yan Shuar at the beginning. Wherever Xiao Xian stepped, he left a deep footprint. With every step, the dust and gravel on the ground would be shaken up. No, that person wanted to say something, but Xiao Xian suddenly sped up. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of that person. He did not hold any stone tools in his hands, but like a hard stone axe, he fiercely smashed towards that person. Because of the totem power, the flame-like totem tattoo on his exposed arm spread to his elbows, making it extremely conspicuous. That person simply did not have the time to speak or be surprised. He instinctively crossed his arms and raised them above his head, intending to forcefully resist this fierce attack. A loud bang sounded in the air. That person was unable to resist Xiao Xian's sudden attack. His legs were unable to withstand such a violent force, and after bending, he knelt on the ground. Where his knees hit the ground, a deep mark was left on the ground. His two arms, in this short period of time, also let out the sound of bones breaking. The snake that was following that person previously shot towards Xiao Xian, opening its mouth to reveal two long sharp fangs. This was poisonous, extremely poisonous. However, Xiao Xian acted as if he did not see it, and did not react to the snake's attack. Yan Shua was so anxious that he wanted to rush over, but he saw a shadow gliding down from the sky and flying up again, taking away that extremely dangerous snake with it. Li raised his head to look at the sky, and was met with a face full of snake blood. Pah! A snake's head was thrown down. Not bothering to wipe away the snake blood on his face, Li looked at the snake's head that had rolled to his feet. Suddenly, he felt weak all over, and his legs went soft. Whoosh! A figure that was much taller than a human flapped its wings and landed on the ground. The snake that was usually rampant had already lost its head, and its remaining body was being torn apart by the large bird. The sharp bird claws easily tore the snake's flesh off, opening its stomach and causing snake blood to splatter everywhere. Probably because they had experienced the humiliation of being dragged down from the sky by a snake, the creatures that Cha-Cha hated the most were snakes. They were also merciless in tearing them apart. Yan Shuo looked at the young man who had saved him. The totem tattoo on his arm was exactly the same as the one that had appeared on his arm last night. Looking at the large bird that had just landed, on the claws that were tearing apart the snake's body, a clear pattern was imprinted into Yan Shua's vision, causing his breathing to become heavy. Tribe. The totem of the Yanjiao tribe. Yan Shua only felt that the blood in his entire body was boiling, and his whole body was trembling. He turned around and looked at the young man that he had just met for the first time today, walking over step by step. Xiao Xian came in front of Yan Shua, grinned, and said, "Let me introduce myself. I am Xiao Xian from the Yanjiao tribe." Chapter 174. The Yanjiao tribe. Many of the people who lived in the Wanderer area were familiar with Yan Shua. They had hunted together in the mountains, so they naturally heard Yan Shua mention the Yanjiao tribe. However, at that time, they all thought that Yan Shua was crazy and did not face reality. Even if the Yanjiao tribe still existed, it would only be a small tribe. The emergence and extinction of small tribes happened every day. Even if the Yanjiao tribe, Yan Shua mentioned, was still there, it would not last long, right? However, now it seemed that it was not what they had imagined. How could a young man from a small tribe have such power? Almost effortlessly, the slave with the snake, who had caused them countless troubles, was beaten to the ground, unable to move. How could a small tribe have an eagle that was much bigger than a man? Looking at the big snake that had been torn to shreds, one could tell that this eagle was not just big. Its claws could directly nail a person to death. Tribe. What an enviable word. They had thought that Yan Shua's family would be killed by the slave today, but they did not expect the situation to be reversed. With a tribe, there was a place to belong. Their flame was still there. Yan Shua's bitter days were over. Yan Shua naturally knew what the others knew. However, things happened too suddenly, and he did not know how to react. Since he was very young, he had dreamed that one day he could return to the Yanjiao tribe that his ancestors talked about. Every time he fought alone, he would think, what kind of place was the Yanjiao tribe? How were the people there? Was the tribe big? Were the totem warriors strong? Now, he looked at the person in front of him who was much younger than him, who had solved the problem with just a lift of his hand, and then looked at the big bird that was tearing the snake meat. He was so excited that he choked with emotion, and did not know what to do. Xiao looked past Yan Shuo and looked at the three people in the house. They were Yan Shuo's wife and children. Then he looked at the small wooden house that was about to collapse. He sighed in his heart. It seemed that this clansman did not have a good life. Moreover, he was a wanderer. Since they were wanderers, it meant that the Yanjiao tribe he was looking for was not here. Xiao did not know what had happened to the other branch, but now was not the time to ask about it. Taking out some jerky from the animal skin bag, Xiao stuffed it into Yan Shuo's hands. Looking at the three people in the house, Xiao signaled Yan Shuo to go and comfort his frightened wife and children. They could no longer stay in Yan Shuo's wooden hut. However, Xiao had the water moonstones in his hands. As long as they paid a little more, they would be able to solve this problem. As for the future, what to do in the future, he would have to discuss it with Yan Shuo later. Yan Shuo's hands trembled as he held the jerky that Xiao had given him. He walked into the house absent-mindedly and almost tripped over the fallen wooden wall. Yan Shuo's wife had already wiped away the tears on her face. She held Yan Shuo's hands tightly and said happily, "It's really here. The Yanjiao tribe is really here." Because their ancestors were all wanderers, Yan Shuo's wife had never thought of joining a tribe. Her situation was different from Yan Shuo's. Their tribe had been exterminated a long time ago, and their fire was truly extinguished. They had become wanderers. But now, Yan Shuo could find the Yanjiao tribe and join it. Naturally, she could also join it. Their difficult days had come to an end. Both husband and wife were very excited. Yan Shuo's wife was the first to react. She wanted to let Xiao into the house, but when she thought of the situation in the house, she felt a little embarrassed. She had also seen Xiao's behavior just now. She always felt very restrained when facing Xiao, who was a real totem warrior. "It's okay. Sisters-in-law, you are busy. I will sit by myself for a while." As he spoke, Xiao looked around. He originally wanted to stack 2 planks on top of each other to make a stool, but when he saw the wooden thorns on top of each other, he gave up. His line of sight fell on the riverbank 200 meters away. Xiao's mind turned, and he walked over there. When Xiao moved, the surrounding people looked at him at the same time. Their line of sight followed Xiao. They wanted to see what this totem warrior was going to do. Yan Shuo's family also looked at Xiao walking towards the riverbank in confusion. Is he angry? Didn't he just say that he wanted to sit down? Is it because we don't have a place to sit? Yan Shuo's wife said worriedly. It shouldn't be. Yan Shuo didn't think that the people of the Yanjiao tribe would be angry because of such a reason. Yan Shuo handed the remaining jerky to his daughter and looked at Xiao's back. In fact, he was also worried that this tribesman who suddenly appeared would abandon his family. However, looking at the eagle that was still eating the snake and didn't seem to want to leave, Yan Shuo's heart was slightly relieved. Xiao walked towards the riverbank. There was a 2-meter-high and 3-meter-long oval-shaped rock there. Usually, when people came to the riverbank, they would tie the straw rope of the raft to the big rock. Because the rock was too big and heavy, even some totem warriors were too lazy to move it. At this time, some people were sitting on the rock by the riverbank, holding freshly roasted meat in their hands. These were a few people who had just used the stones they found to exchange for food with the traveling team. They were all wanderers, but there were differences in strength. They were considered the stronger ones in the wanderers' residential area, and they were in a group, so the other wanderers didn't dare to offend them. In the wanderers' residential area, they lived the best life, and they were also more domineering. They found fruit trees in the mountains, and they wouldn't let others pick a single fruit. When they saw someone hunting small prey, they would even snatch it. As the saying goes, there is strength in numbers. When these few gathered together, they were also a force to be reckoned with. The other wanderers didn't dare to fight with them, and those who did were already dead. When Xiao hit the slave, they also saw it, and they even took pleasure in his misfortune, because they also suffered a lot under the hands of that slave, especially the leader, who secretly fantasized about roasting the snake beside that slave. Wasn't he just a slave? In order to show off his strength, he always had a big snake wrapped around his body, to show that he was stronger than the wanderers. After all, not everyone could bear the weight of that big snake and move freely. Also, with his usual arrogant appearance, did he think that he could pretend to be a slave owner? Therefore, when they saw the slave with the snake being beaten, they were secretly happy. But now, as they watched Xiao Xian walk straight towards them, they felt uneasy. "Leader, he is walking towards us," one of them whispered. "I know," the one who was called leader said in a low voice. "What does he want to do? Snatch food?" The Wanderers district usually encountered people snatching food, so the first thing they thought of was naturally this. He can't be thinking of avenging Yan Shua, right? They used to find trouble with Yan Shua, but because Yan Shua's strength was indeed stronger than the others, he was a tough nut to crack. Usually, Yan Shua didn't have any conflicts with them, so they were too lazy to spend more time on Yan Shua. After finding trouble with him a few times, they ignored him. Looking at Xiao Xian getting closer and closer, the few of them became more and more uncertain. Then they did the same thing. They took the meat that wasn't cooked from the fire and hurriedly stuffed it into their mouths without caring about the heat. This way, the other party wouldn't be able to snatch it, right? Xiao Xian walked over, glanced at them, and walked towards the person leaning against the rock. That leader saw Xiao Xian walking towards him, and his actions of stuffing the meat became even more hurried, his hands trembling. He could still clearly remember what happened to the snake slave just now. Lowering his head, that leader didn't dare to look at Xiao Xian. His cheeks were puffed up, and his mouth was full of meat. He didn't even have time to swallow it before he stuffed another piece into his mouth. He was so full that he couldn't even close his mouth. "Excuse me." That leader heard the voice from above. If it was someone else in the Wanderers district, they would have already made a move. But looking at the snake slave who was beaten to the point that he couldn't get up from the ground, the leader was conflicted. Should he beat him up, or should he hand over the unfinished meat in his hand? "Don't you have to apologize first?" "Excuse me." The voice from above sounded again. This time, that leader came back to his senses and reacted. He hurriedly moved his butt, but felt that he didn't move far enough, so he moved a little more. He wanted to see how his companions were doing, but when he turned his head, he found that they had already stood up and ran away, looking at him from afar. At this time, these people abandoned their companions so straightforwardly, even if the person in trouble was their leader. "Damn it!" That leader cursed in his heart, wondering if he should also stand up and run away. He shouldn't anger this person, right? However, before he could get up, he felt that something was wrong. The whispers around him seemed to have quieted down. Did something happen? He felt that the people around him were looking at him strangely. That leader hesitated whether to look back or not. Soon, he found that there was a large shadow on the ground beside him. The shadow was still moving. This was. He turned his neck stiffly and looked over there. Then, he saw that the big rock that they usually couldn't move with their combined strength was easily lifted up by someone. Not only did the person lift it up, but the person also threw the rock up and down, as if he was weighing something. Puff. Cough, cough. He was so agitated that his emotions fluctuated too much. That leader almost spat out all the food that was stuffed in his mouth. And the people who ran away and looked over here all had their cheeks puffed up. Their mouths were open, and they could see that their mouths were stuffed with half-cooked meat. All of them stared with their eyes wide open, as if their eyeballs were about to pop out. In this kind of place where people often moved around, they had seen some totem warriors move big rocks, but they had never seen anyone move it so easily. It was as if what they moved was not a rock, but a small piece of wood. Xiao Xian raised his arms and moved the rock over to where Xiao Xian and his family were. Midway, because there was a bulge on the ground, Xiao Xian directly lifted the rock and jumped over it. The people around him. Yan Shua's wife saw that Xiao Xian easily moved the big rock over, and her eyelids twitched. She said to Yan Shua, "Now I believe you when you said that the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe can easily carry a bear. Probably, if a bear was in their hands, it would just be tossed around for fun." Chapter 175. Xiao Xian lifted a large stone and quickly walked from the riverbank to the door of Yan Shua's house. He kicked some wooden blocks to the side and threw the stone on the ground. Bang! Even those who stood further away felt the ground shake, not to mention Yan Shua's family. The close shaking caused another part of the wooden house, which was not very sturdy to begin with, to collapse. He had overdone it. Xiao Xian picked his nose and smiled apologetically at Yan Shua's family. "Cough about that. I'll help you fix the house later," Xiao Xian said. When he was in the tribe, building a big house did not take much time. He followed the people of the Pu tribe and squeezed into a small place only because he thought it was troublesome. He would only stay for 2 or 3 days, so building a house was unnecessary. Moreover, he was unfamiliar with the place, so it was safer and less worrisome to stay in a place arranged for him. However, now that he met people from the same tribe, it was a different story. Yan Shuo's family was not angry at all. Instead, their eyes were shining as they looked at Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian was strong, so was the tribe. The stronger the tribe, the more stable they could stand in this world and survive for a long time. No wonder their ancestors repeatedly told their children and grandchildren to remember their tribe and wait for the day they returned. Now it seemed that all their efforts were worth it. After Xiao Xian threw the stone here, he jumped up and sat down. He waited for Yan Shuo's family to calm down a little before he discussed matters with Yan Shuo. As for moving the large stone in front of everyone, it was only a deterrent. Perhaps it was not much in other places, but here, it was still useful. Looking at the happy atmosphere, Li wanted to reduce his presence as much as possible. He wanted to run as far away as possible. Xiao Xian's series of actions had already made him tremble with fear. Looking at the snake slave who was still kneeling there in pain and the broken snake head at his feet, Li took a deep breath and turned to run. However, just as he turned and took a step, a wooden stick broke through the wind and pierced through his chest. The two ends of the wood weren't sharpened, but it still forcefully pierced through Ruthless' chest. Before Ruthless could even sense it, he had already been hit. Kneeling on the ground, Li tried his best to keep his eyelids open, wanting to see who threw the wooden stick at him. But all he saw was a ball of golden light slowly approaching from afar. The so-called golden light was naturally not some special luminous object, but the slave owner wearing the golden fur. Yesterday, Xiao Xian saw that the slave owner was still wearing a black spotted animal skin. Today, he had changed it again. The golden fur reflected the light of the sun, making the slave owner look quite eye-catching. It seemed that this slave owner liked to use this method to show his nobility. As a slave owner with a lot of slaves and financial resources, there was no shortage of animal skins. Xiao Xian learned some information about this slave owner from the other members of the Pu tribe. The slave owner's name was Xueqi. He had only been here for a few years. Sometimes he would stay here for a while before leaving. Sometimes he would disappear for a long time. He had a lot of people under him, so he didn't need to personally manage them. It was said that the leader of the Pu tribe's traveling team had a good relationship with Xueqi, so he could get some preferential treatment here. But Xiao Xian felt that when Fan Ning was facing Xueqi, he was not so natural, and even cautious. Xueqi was a very dangerous person. The cruelty of a slave owner was something that everyone understood. The smile on the surface was not necessarily true. There could be a knife hidden in the smile. When Xueqi, who was wearing a dazzling golden outfit, slowly walked over, there was still a smile on his face. It was as if the stick that killed Ruthless was not kicked by him. Beside this slave owner, there were 2 other people who were also his slaves. However, those 2 people had a relatively high status among the slaves owned by Xueqi. They were not comparable to the snake slave that Li Yi brought. While everyone was looking at Xueqi, who was wearing a dazzling golden outfit, Xiao Xian raised his eyes to the sky. Just now, that slave owner had kicked out more than one stick. In the sky, a long shadow quickly fell from a high place. Puff! The person who had been beaten by Xiao Xian to kneel there, unable to get up, had his throat pierced from behind. He looked at his own blood flowing down the wooden stick, as if he wanted to say something, but his throat could not make any other sound. The chain-like lines that originally appeared on his neck began to disappear from the wound. He raised his arm, wanting to grab the person who walked past him, but found that the distance of less than 5 steps was like a natural moat that could not be touched. He could only watch as that golden ball slowly passed by him. When all the chain-like lines disappeared, the person who often came to the wanderer area to be arrogant, powerlessly dropped his hand, no longer breathing. The people around only felt a chill go straight to their heads, and their fear of the slave owner deepened. Xiao Xian looked at the slave owner who was walking straight towards him. He was wearing clothes made of linen, much better than the coarse linen that the Pu tribe had. And on Xueqi's waist, there was also a very fine polished stone axe hanging from a leather rope. The stone axe was not big, the body was flat, the blade was wide, the curve of the arc was a little big, and the 2 corners were slightly upturned. There were also some patterns on the body, and it could be seen that those patterns were very carefully carved. And this kind of carefully crafted stone axe was definitely not used for cutting trees. This kind of autocratic primitive weapon looked like a kind of accessory that hung on the body. In addition, Xiao Xian also felt the movement of the power of inheritance from Xueqi. The slave owner was like the combination of the chief and the shaman in the tribe. He had absolute leadership and some abilities similar to the shaman. It was just that the slaves under him were not as lucky as the warriors in the tribe. Xueqi looked at Cha-Cha next to him, then turned back to Xiao Xian and said, "Sorry, the slaves below are not obedient." Obviously, the slave owner had understood the whole story, but he did not attack Xiao Xian as other people thought, nor did he apologize as he said. Instead, he watched Cha-Cha eat the snake with great interest. After watching for a while, the slave owner dressed in glittering gold left with his people, as if he had come just to execute the two disobedient slaves. But Xiao Xian guessed that the slave owner's goal was not so. Just now, Xueqi's eyes stayed on Cha-Cha's feet for a while. Xueqi's focus should be on the Yanjiao tribe. Could it be that he knew about the Yanjiao tribe? Many slave owners would often travel around the mainland, so maybe he really did know. But looking at Xueqi's appearance, he did not intend to say more. Xueqi left, and the people around him also took away the two slaves who were killed. Only the two pools of blood on the ground told everyone what had happened here. After leaving the Wanderers area, one of the people who followed Xueqi asked for the vacant position. "If you killed them, you killed them. Just promote another one." Xueqi said indifferently. The person next to him respectfully bowed and responded. Xueqi's answer was as he expected. Maybe the slave owner did not even know the names of the two slaves. The ranks of slaves were divided into Li, Fu, Tai, and so on. The slaves below Tide were all inferior slaves. The snake slave was only responsible for raising snakes for the master and got more power, but his rank was still a bit lower than Tai, so it was not worth the slave owner to remember his name. The slave owner naturally did not care about the life and death of the inferior people. After Xueqi left, Xiao Xian chatted with Yan Shuo. Next, Xiao Xian would definitely go to the central region to inquire about some information. With Yan Shuo's current ability, it was too dangerous to go to the central region. Plus, he still had his wife and children, so Xiao Xian could not bring them all. He did not understand the situation in the central region. He only knew that many people there were very strong. Before the situation was clear, it was not convenient to bring these people. Yan Shuo also knew that it was not good for his family to go to the central region, so he wanted to stay. When Xiao Xian came back from the central region, he would follow. Xiao Xian originally intended to let Yan Shuo live in another place. The slave owner was not easy to get along with. Yan Shuo refused. No need. If the slave owner really wanted to kill people, he would not wait. Just like Li and the others, he would do it on the spot. Since he did not do anything to us, he will not do anything in a short time. Yan Shuo still had some understanding of the slave owner. Moreover, I am more familiar with this place. I also know what kind of people are around here. If we change places, it may not be the same. Yan Shuo said. Xiao Xian thought about it and agreed. He only knew people from the drumming tribe and the Pu tribe here. The Pu tribe would not let people from other tribes stay in their tribe for a long time, and the drumming tribe was too far away. No one would go there. Yan Shuo's family could not go there by themselves. It was too dangerous. After thinking about it, Yan Shuo's idea was more practical. Then you can stay here for the time being. I will help you build a house. With Xiao Xian's help, the new wooden house could be built quickly. The person who came to find Yan Shuo last night was in a daze because of his injuries. He woke up very late today. When he woke up, he heard others talking about Yan Shuo and hurried over. As a comrade who had fought together, Yan Shuo also wanted to help him. Before the other party went to find the slave owner, he would let him stay with them. The new house was bigger than the previous one, so it was possible for one more person to live in it. Xiao Xian also felt that it was feasible. With more people they could take care of each other. When I come back from the central region, I will bring you back to the tribe. Xiao Xian left some water moonstones for Yan Shuo, and also made some stone tools for him. Compared to before, Yan Shuo's strength was a little stronger now. It was absolutely possible for him to make a living, and maybe he could even hunt a lot of prey. On the day the Pu tribe left, Xiao Xian temporarily bid farewell to Yan Shuo's family. He followed the expanded travel team and continued to head to the central region. According to Yan Shuo, he was not sure what happened to the tribe that year, but he knew that there should be many wanderers like him. If he could find these people, Xiao Xian could bring them back to the tribe. Chapter 176. When they set off again, the team had expanded. In addition to the people from the Pu tribe, there were also travel teams from other tribes. After the team expanded, it became more lively. Xiao Xian could also hear a lot of gossip from other tribes. When he was resting, he would also ask people about some things. After a few days, Xiao Xian learned a lot of new information. Xiao Xian had a map in his hands. He had drawn it himself. The map left by the ancestors could no longer be used. After nearly 1,000 years, the mountains had become plains, plains had become mountains and rivers. The changes were too great. The composition and distribution of the tribes had also changed greatly. Xiao Xian needed to draw a new map to bring back, so that the tribe would not have difficulty crossing the river. At this moment, an experienced traveler was talking to Xiao Xian, telling him what he had seen in the past. At first, we did not take this road, but took another one. Later, there was a war between the tribes, and it has not subsided yet. We temporarily changed to this one. The river on that route was much wider than this one, and there were 2 colors. There was a tribe beside the river. They were very good at making rafts. The rafts over there were the biggest and sturdiest ones I have ever seen. It would be great if we could also have a wooden raft like that. The man recalled, his eyes filled with envy. Seeing Xiao Xian's puzzled face, the man gestured to Xiao Xian and explained in detail the biggest and sturdiest rafts he had mentioned. After listening to the other person's description, Xiao Xian paused and said, "Is that a boat?" Yes, they call it a boat. The man continued to recall, talking about what he had seen. Only a few years had passed, and many of his memories were vague. Xiao Xian memorized these. If he had time, he wanted to go there and have a look. When the time came, the people of the tribe would need a boat to cross the river. Without metal, how to make a big boat, Xiao Xian was not sure. It would be best if he could learn some technology from there. I remember that there are also many tourists over there. Another traveler was unwilling to be left out and came over to chat. It seems so, but it's just to help resist the tree and chop the wood. Hey, I heard that the slave owner also went there and took away a lot of slaves. The previous person said. In order to increase the number of slaves under their command, the slave owners would always go to some places to get people. Those wanderers who had lost their fire seeds or whose tribes had been destroyed were the favorite targets of the slave owners. However, they would not immediately go to those wanderers after their tribes were destroyed. Instead, they would wait for 1 or 2 years for the wanderers to see the situation clearly. They would only go to those wanderers when they were close to despair after suffering setbacks. At that time, some wanderers who had suffered a lot would not only not avoid the slave owners, but would also take the initiative to stick to them. Just like ruthlessness. In order to get more slaves, the slave owners would move around, and Xueqi, whom Xiao Xian had met before, was the same. When Xiao Xian listened to the 2 people, he learned about some of the places Xueqi had been before. Xiao Xian secretly remembered those places. He suspected that Xueqi had seen people like Yan Shuo, or had seen the totem patterns of the Yanjiao tribe. He didn't know if it was possible that he had seen it when he was looking for slaves. No matter what, Xiao Xian intended to look for it when they passed by those places. After all, according to the words passed down by Yan Shuo's ancestors, there should be a lot of wanderers scattered everywhere. After all these years, if one generation after another lived, there should be a lot of people. The Yanjiao tribe on the other side of the river did not have a large population. If they wanted to expand, the first thing to do was to call back the scattered Yanjiao tribesmen. In addition to those places, there are a lot of wanderers on the grassland we have to pass through. Slave owners often go there. A traveler said. Xiao Xian looked at the area that was not completely drawn on the map. That was the grassland. The travel team would not go deep, and would only pass by the border of the grassland. There were a lot of tribes on the grassland, and the people there were also very tough. The travel team generally would not go deep. Just as they were talking, Yu suddenly said, "Look in front." Xiao Xian's line of sight left the map and looked at the water in front of them. On the water in front of them, there were some people floating, and each of them had fatal wounds. "Is there a war in front?" someone asked. It seems that the scale is not small. The people around them were talking, and the leaders of several travel teams also gathered together to discuss. Finally, they decided to rest on the shore for the time being. Let's take a break first. Send some people to scout ahead. If there is a battle between tribes, we will avoid it first, or wait for it to end before we set off. One of the people in front said. The people on the raft paddled. After the raft reached the shore, Xueqi and the people around him spontaneously tied the raft to a tree or a big rock on the shore. They also took their own bags with them. No one put anything on the raft, because they did not know when they would have to abandon the raft to escape. After all, this was not their own tribe. Especially in a place where there was a war, it was especially dangerous. It was easy to get caught in the crossfire. Each of the leaders sent a dozen or so people to scout the situation at the front. Xueqi, let's go and see if there are any wild beasts around. We can hunt one and eat it. You said. When they were resting, the people in the team could hunt nearby, as long as they did not go too far. If they went too far and the team did not see anyone, they would not wait. Okay. Xueqi said to the people next to him. If the team set off, he would let them greet them. After leaving the tribe, Xueqi ate less fearsome beasts. Generally, they only hunted wild beasts, and these people did not go to places where there were fearsome beasts. He kind of missed fearsome beast meat. He did not know where Cha-Cha had gone to hunt. That guy had high requirements for food and did not like ordinary wild beasts. However, Cha-Cha had never been left behind. Even if it left temporarily, it could quickly catch up with the team. Xueqi was not worried about it. Look, there's a deer over there. You pointed in a direction and said excitedly. Then he quickly took out his hairdryer and used the poisonous thorn as an arrow. He put it in and carefully approached the deer. He had to hurry. Otherwise, if the other members of the travel team got there first, there would be no food. You quietly approached the deer, and Xueqi followed. However, Xueqi felt that there was something wrong with the surroundings. It was not necessarily a crisis, but something seemed to have happened. He was more careful when he sneaked around. When he was about the same distance away from the deer, you pointed the end of the blowpipe towards the deer and put the other end into his mouth. While he was blowing, his cheeks puffed up. Whoosh! The speed of the arrow was very fast, and the arrow that was blown out accurately hit the deer. The poison in the arrow needles was not a lethal poison, but a very powerful paralyzing poison. When a deer was shot, the arrow needles would pierce through the deer's skin, and the poison would spread. After the deer felt that it was being attacked, it wanted to run away quickly. However, after taking 2 steps, it staggered and fell to the ground after a few steps. Hey! It's done! Yu was very excited. He was about to go and collect the prey, but he was stopped by Xueqi. What's wrong? You looked at Xueqi in confusion. Xueqi did not answer. Instead, he raised his chin in a direction. You looked over. In the woods not far from the deer, some birds flew up. They were probably alarmed by the deer's running and falling. What's wrong with those birds? You still did not understand. He thought about it and said helplessly, You don't want to eat those birds, do you? Although those birds are not too small, they are not easy to catch. Why would we eat those birds when we have a deer? Xueqi looked at you in silence for a few seconds and said, Those are scavenger birds. Scavenger birds? They eat corpses. Xueqi pointed over there. There are quite a few of them. Because of the deer's movement, some birds were startled, but Xueqi believed that it was only a small part of them. There were many that did not fly at all. The birds that flew up just now quickly flew back down. If there was no food to attract them, why would they stay on the ground? Yu's face turned serious, and he put away the hairdryer. He did not care about the deer. Compared to his life, food could be put aside first. Because of the direction of the wind, when they came over, they did not smell anything strange. In addition, there were many flowers blooming near the riverbank. The fragrance of the flowers interfered with the sense of smell, so they did not notice it at first. Let's go and take a look, you said. Before Xueqi could answer, you had already taken out his stone knife and went over. Xueqi looked around and did not see anyone else for the time being, so he also followed. They were getting closer and closer. Because of the dense trees, they could not see the situation there. However, as they got closer, Xueqi could already smell the unpleasant smell. In addition, there were also the sounds of the scavenger birds pecking at food. Probably because there were too many of them fighting with each other. Carefully pushing aside the branches in front of them, Xiao Xian saw the source of the smell. Dead people, a lot of dead people. Compared to those floating on the river, there were more here. Moreover, because there was no river water to wash them, there was a layer of red blood on the ground. Their clothes were similar to those on the river, so they should be from the same tribe. Looking at the situation, it was obvious that they had been slaughtered. These people. Yu was about to say something when he suddenly found that there was an arm moving in the pile of dead people. There's still someone alive. Hearing Yu's voice, the person who was pressed down struggled and pushed the person on top away, revealing a face full of blood. There was only one wound on his body, but it was almost fatal. Most of the others had fatal wounds on their bodies. The birds that were pecking on the ground flew up when they sensed the presence of the living people, but some gluttonous birds stayed on the ground. Help! Help me! The man did not care about the birds pecking around him and crawled towards Yu and Xiao Xian. Yu frowned and took a step back. He did not know these people, and he did not want to get involved in the struggle between tribes. He was just a traveler, not looking for trouble. Let's leave. Before you could finish, there was a whoosh. Puchi! The man who was crawling towards them was pierced by a spear and nailed to the ground. Xiao Xian raised his head and looked in one direction. There was a person standing on a tree. A man wearing a mask. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.